The big story, of course, my friends, right now is not politics. It's Hurricane Milton. It's strengthened back to a Category 5. It is heading straight for Florida. And, man, they're telling everybody, get out now. I would just say, please listen to the advice they're giving you. Look, this storm's going to come in. Property is going to get destroyed. You don't have to be there. Now, I'm not going to tell anybody how to live their lives. Just I'm going to say, please heed the advice of the emergency professionals and the first responders, law enforcement. Everybody's trying to manage this and make sure you guys live. Because for our friends who are down there, I mean, a 3-day vacation down over at Timcast Studios sounds like a good deal. And then, hopefully we make it through this. But there is more. There's more news on this. They're saying there's a 20% chance that another hurricane is forming and could actually slam into Florida. So this is the big story, of course, that I hope we're all paying attention to. I hope you guys are prepared. But of course, my friends, the fun political news is the 60 Minutes interview with Kamala Harris, where she gave wishy-washy answers. Bill Whitaker, actually did a really great job. He pressed her. There was one point where he says, do you regret undoing Trump's policies? The border crossings have gotten worse. And she's like, no, we're proposing solutions. He goes, yeah, but it's quadrupled. And she goes, but we cut that in half. And I'm sitting here being like, so it's doubled? It's not a really good response. And, don't take my word for it. Do not take my word for it. You're going to say, Tim, you're biased. You just don't like Kamala Harris. The betting markets have flipped on a dime. After this interview drops, you can see Poly Market just boosh. Trump shoots straight up. And now in the aggregate betting markets, we are looking at Donald Trump with a 3 or 4 point lead. This means that people who saw that were like, I don't think she's going to win now. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about it's Media Blitz Day for Kamala Harris. She's on The View. She's on Howard Stern. She's on 60 Minutes. And I'm seeing on Twitter, people are complaining about Kamala stories. Shout out to The Quartering, who was like, are there any non-Kamala stories? Well, sorry, buddy. She's doing the press run, and it's getting a lot of attention. So we'll talk about that. Joe Biden is actually countering her messages, and then people think the hurricanes are man-made. So we got a lot to go through. We'll get into all that. Before we get started, my friends, head over to mypillow.com/Tim and buy pillows, because you got to sleep well. But it's not just pillows. They got a little bit of everything. MyPillow's got more than pillows. They got, what do they got? Washcloths. They got towels. They got good stuff. So once again, MyPillow's been canceled by another box store. Sad to hear it. So they're passing an incredible offer to our listeners. The standard MyPillow retails for $49.98, but now you're going to get one for $14.98. There's a limit of 10 on this offer. Do not miss out on the amazing deal while supplies last. Order now using promo code TIM. MyPillow, of course, is made with patented adjustable fill. It adjusts to your exact individual needs regardless of your sleep position, helps keep your neck aligned, and holds its shape all night long so you get the best sleep of your life. That's not all. Get their 6-piece kitchen or bath towel sets for $25. The brand new mattress topper as low as $69.98. Their famous MyPillow bed sheets for as low as $25. So much more. Again, go to mypillow.com/Tim. And once again, shout out to Mike Lindell for sponsoring the show. Everybody in this space, we're always trying to outsell each other with the pillows, but promo code Tim is the only promo code you need. So don't forget to also smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and I've got an announcement. The power of unity. This weekend, Sunday, October 13th, 2 to 5 p.m., I will be joining Scott Pressler and Jack Posobiec for an early Get Out the Vote event in Bucks County, Newtown, PA. I got to put my money where my mouth is, right? A lot of people are saying, what are we doing to encourage people to go vote? What are you doing to encourage people to register to vote? And so when the opportunity arose, I said, I will be there. And I will say exactly this, that we just need to participate. Everybody needs to express their opinions, and I will keep it particularly simple. But it should be a lot of fun. Hope to see all of you there. I hope also you guys go to timcast.com, click join us, and become a member, because we can only do the show if you guys are members. That's the reality of it. If you like the show and you think it should exist, then click join us at timcast.com, $10 a month. You get access to our Discord server where you can hang out with like-minded individuals, and we're going to have that members-only show coming up for you at 10 p.m. Uncensored, not so family-friendly, but always fun. And if you're listening on the audio side, Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, give us a good review, because we never ask, and it's apparently a really important thing. We got 1 million listeners on our audio side, and we only have a few thousand reviews because we never ask, and every other podcast does. So if you're listening, just if each and every one of you just gave that review right now, we'd shoot straight up in those rankings. It'd be greatly appreciated. So once again, smash that like button and subscribe, share the show. Joining us tonight to talk about this and so much more is Tor Ekeland.
Hi.
Who are you? What do you do?
I am a federal criminal defense lawyer based out of Brooklyn, New York, and I mainly do defend people accused of computer crimes. And, I do some white collar stuff, and I've basically been dealing with DOJ for like the last decade. And
I imagine you don't have a favorable opinion.
my opinion has changed over the last decade or so,
Yeah. You were, I mean, you're like the hacker lawyer. That was like your beat back in the day. That's what people, I mean.
Yep. No, that's fair to say.
Yeah.
That's fair to say. I mean, that was my first exposure to DOJ and the FBI. And I'll just be honest, I think they've just gotten out of hand in this country. And I think there's this sort of cult of the prosecutor that it seems to be particularly strong on the left right now. I mean, they're running a prosecutor for president.
Yeah.
I just think it's just gotten out of hand and is not healthy for America.
But like, where do you find yourself politically? You're not like a right-wing guy or anything.
I'm all over the place.
Yeah.
Like, I guess if I identified as anything, I'd identify as maybe libertarian, but like I've got views on the right, I've got views on the left. That's one of the things I'm struggling with right now in this country is this polarization, and everybody seems to be like, we have to be this side, we have to be that side. You've got to go around this issue, and
well, we'll convince you.
Yeah, I know. I'm open to being refuted, as one of my favorite philosophers says.
Should be fun. I think everyone will be critical of the DOJ though. But we got Elaad hanging out.
Hey, what's up, Tim? Hey, everybody. I'm Elaad Eliyahu, field reporter and Jewish affairs correspondent here at Timcast. Hannah Claire.
I think that's a made-up title, but I respect your ability to lie to the public. No, I'm just kidding. I'm Hannah Claire Brevla. I'm a writer. You can see me on this podcast most nights, and let's get started.
So we'll just start with the story we got from Fox News, because these reports on the 60 Minutes interview from Harris are all over the place. I'm not seeing very many positive ones. We'll just say Fox News has criticism. 60 Minutes asks Harris whether it was a mistake for Biden admin to go soft on the border. VP repeatedly dodges. Now, of course, Trump has responded. And instead of giving any compliments to Kamala Harris, Daily Beast just says Trump gets unhinged, even for him, over Kamala Harris' 60 Minutes interview. You may be asking yourselves, Tim, how do we know what the truth is? If the liberal side is saying that Kamala did just fine and Trump is unhinged, and the conservative side is saying, no, Kamala was miserably bad, it was awful. Well, how do we know it's true? You got to ask Vegas. Because when you take a look at the betting odds, you can see it plain as day. Donald Trump is enjoying a 3-point lead over Harris, and it is specifically after the CBS interview drops that the betting odds for Trump shot straight up. Trump didn't say anything. This is the important factor. If we pull up Polymarket specifically, you can see that just following this, literally, it's basically right around the time the CBS interview clips are beginning to drop. They're going viral. We just see Donald Trump's odds jump straight up. Now, we can see that Trump's odds were improving. We were getting word that Kamala was going to be doing this interview. Clips had been emerging. But it really looks like in aggregate, Kamala sank. She just did The View. She did Howard Stern. We'll talk about that. But I got to say, when it comes to this interview, it really does seem like, in fact, she bombed it. I'm curious what y'all think.
The only thing I learned from this interview is that she says she owns a Glock, which I find fascinating and convenient that she would pick the law enforcement gun. I think that it is also fascinating that she would be on a media blitz right now. I mean, it's not just this show, although this is probably the biggest. She did call her daddy. She's apparently about to do late night shows and all kinds of things. And her poll numbers are going down, which probably means that every one of her advisors that was like, we cannot let this woman speak to the public, knew what they were talking about.
I think my favorite part was when Bill Whitaker, the reporter for the journalist for CBS, asks her about, the people don't know who you are. You're running, but they still don't know who you are. And then she has the gall to say that, I'm honored to have earned the support of the delegates. You can't just expect to be made the candidate or the nominee or whatever. And that's literally what happened. But hey, look, we can complain all day and night. The betting odds are tanking. Trump's improving. There's a lot of news. We got a story, Wall Street Journal, talking about the internal polling in Michigan has Democrats panicking. And this is the second time we've heard this because she is losing white-collar workers.
Kamala Harris, I think now is struggling from a post-honeymoon phase. So everything was really jolly after the convention, and going to the convention, she got the whole Democrat Party behind her. But as more questions are being brought up, she's going to struggle to maintain that coalition. One of the really good questions in a clip I saw from Bill Whitaker was asking about how she's changed her position specifically on immigration. She's changed her position on Medicare for all. She supported that in the past and now doesn't. And the more that her actual positions are exposed, the more difficult it will be more difficult for her to be able to maintain this coalition that she's building. And it's only going to slowly go downhill from here. I think the Kamala Harris campaign is just hoping that before the election, she maintains above 50%.
Well, let me play this clip. You can hear it right from the show.
A quarter of registered voters still say they don't know you. They don't know what makes you tick. And why do you think that is? What's the disconnect?
It's an election, Bill. And I take it seriously that I have to earn everyone's vote. This is an election for President of the United States. No one should be able to take for granted that they can just declare themselves a candidate and automatically receive support. You have to earn it. And
I got to be honest. I have seen so much from the Harris campaign in the past couple of days. I think a good reason why her betting odds went down over the weekend was that tweet where she said she's giving Lebanon $157 million. But I have to wonder if after this, she goes backstage with Tim Walz and they bust out laughing, being like, can you believe that people buy this? She literally says in 60 Minutes, you can't take for granted just being made the nominee or whatever. Like, she's describing herself. She has to know this.
It's kind of an empty answer too. Like, I still don't know who she is, right? Like, I don't, like, she did all these interviews, like, well, what are her substantive positions on anything? Right. I don't know. And she seems to blow with the wind.
And how does she respond to voters who are saying, we don't know who you are? And her response is, yes, I have to earn votes. Okay, but we're not that far out and you're not really explaining who you are. Like, you have an opportunity to say, oh, well, obviously, you know, I have to do more to sort of explain to people why I think I'm the champion for this, that, and the other. And instead, she's sort of like, here are a lot of platitudes and empty answers, and I won't address their concerns that they don't know me well enough, you know, less than 30 days before the election.
Why she's refusing to answer the question, who am I? What are my positions on things, is because people will attack her for it. If she's running on, I'm a second term of Joe Biden, then she'll be attacked as too pro-Israel and not progressive enough. If she comes out with a very anti-Israel position or extremely pro-Medicaid for all, it's going to ruin the coalition that the Democrats have built. That is, it's untenable. And they're hoping that they could just hold it together with tape for another month or so until it all really falls apart. And then they're going to let all the cracks show, because once Kamala Harris, if, God forbid, Kamala Harris was elected, then we will see the coalition, I think, splinter fairly quickly.
Yeah. Well, we got another clip, because we're just going to, I'm sorry, for all the viewers at home who are going, please, Tim, no more clips of Kamala. No, you got to listen because you have to learn.
Let me tell you what your critics and the columnists say.
okay.
They say that the reason so many voters don't know you is that you have changed your position on so many things. You were against fracking, now you're for it. You supported looser immigration policies, now you're tightening them up. You were for Medicare for all, now you're not. So many that people don't truly know what you believe or what you stand for, and I know you've heard that.
In the last 4 years, I have been Vice President of the United States. And I have been traveling our country. And I have been listening to folks and seeking what is possible in terms of common ground. I believe in building consensus. We are a diverse people, geographically, regionally, in terms of where we are in our backgrounds. And what the American people do want is that we have leaders who can build consensus, where we can figure out compromise and understand it's not a bad thing as long as you don't compromise your values.
Wow, and people complain
to
about
find
Trump,
common sense solutions.
All right, Tor, what's your assessment? Have you been convinced to vote for her?
No, I just don't know. Like, she just dodges everything. Like, what's her position? She blows with the wind. She seems like an opportunist. I don't just answer the question, man. I mean,
she doesn't have an answer. That's the issue.
Well, she doesn't. She's terrified of being pinned down because she wants to be able to switch to whatever's convenient. Like, she's like taking Liz Cheney's endorsement. Like, I thought the Cheneys were like the kiss of death on the left, right? Like, what's going on?
They're valued Republicans now.
Well,
Adam Kinzinger.
Right.
I mean, when you saw that Dick and Liz Cheney were endorsing the Democrats, like what was your assessment when you saw that happen? Did it surprise you?
No, it didn't, because I think she's an opportunist, you know, and I think that's like why she dated Montel. That's why she dated Slick Willie. That's why, like, that's her whole, you know, history. And like, date who you want and get up to the top however you want. But when you're at this level and you want to be president of the United States, I want a straight answer on what your positions are.
There's no one left to date.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, she's trying to date the American public, right?
Not well, though. You know? Like,
You know.
she's not convincing anyone of her prowess as a charismatic leader here. I wonder too if it bothers anyone else. They have, you know, one shot on the interviewer, right? They occasionally cut to her face, but when she's giving her answers, there's a bunch of jump cuts there. I find myself thinking, like, did you actually say a lot of other random things? And they were like, we just got to condense this down. This woman is just talking nonsense.
I think the real reason why she's changed her positions on this is because in the past she was running in a primary from the left against Joe Biden, so she had more of the further leftist positions. And otherwise, in California, she was running as a senator again in California, one of the bluest states we have. So obviously, she has to be extremely progressive there. She has to flip on fracking now. Why? Because she has to win Pennsylvania. So all of this just comes down to the politics of it. She's running to win, not because of any of her ideals, or she's at least masking them now. But that's the real reason. Any of these things have changed. When she was running against Joe Biden, she wasn't the real moderate in that primary. So she had to say, hey, I support Medicare for all. I support sex changes for government-funded sex changes for illegal immigrants, because I'm going to take the progressive bulwark. I'm going to be the progressive bulwark in this race. Now she's the moderate because she wants to appear moderate relative to Donald Trump. So that's why she's trying to stake these less extreme positions. So climate change doesn't exist anymore, I guess. I guess climate change is no longer an existential issue.
That was never her
If
signature
we're
issue.
worried, for all progressives it was, and she was against fracking in the past. So now why she's for fracking, not because climate change does or doesn't matter, but it's because it's not popular right now in Pennsylvania. So as things blow in the wind, her only principle is getting elected.
Okay, well, I can show you one of her principles, and it is from CNN. I want to start by saying this. First, without bearing the lead, this is a story from last month where Kamala Harris had told the ACLU she was in favor of giving sex change operations to detained illegal immigrants. That's a wild thing for CNN to report. They must be conspiracy theorists to say such abhorrent nonsense. But if CNN's reporting it, the only thing I can do is say, I guess they're right. I mean, they're the Facebook fact checkers, aren't they? Or at least maybe they're not, but they're the official source, and I defer to you. So when Kamala Harris goes on CBS and she can't pin down any kind of actual policy positions, she gives generic canned responses. Let's just go to what CNN had to say. When Donald Trump mentioned this at the CBS debates, they acted like he was crazy. And this is what they do. I don't care if Trump says it or Elaad says it or Pee Wee Herman, whatever. Is he still around? I don't know what that guy's name was. I don't care who says it. Okay. It's true. It's been reported. Kamala Harris filled out this questionnaire and she was in favor of these ridiculous positions. She has supported banning fracking. She has supported Medicare for all, Medicaid for all. She's taken the most extreme positions. She wants to do away with gas-powered vehicles. She wants EV mandates. That's been in this current administration. Now that she's running, she won't give us any straight answer on anything.
Pee Wee Herman died in 2023.
Paul
We just missed
Rubens.
his chance to endorse.
Paul Rubens?
Yeah.
Rubin, yeah.
Well,
We
if
just
he...
missed his chance to get endorsement on Kamala Harris or not.
I have to be honest, if he burst from the grave, came up and said this, I would be surprised. But my point is, when Donald Trump says this, we get this wave of anti-Trump media saying he's crazy and making up garbled nonsense. These liberals, they make comics where it's like Trump says they're trying to, trans the immigrants. And they're like, Trump's crazy. Why is he saying these things? Trump needed to say this at the debate. He shouldn't have said she wants to give sex change surgery to illegal immigrants. He should have said CNN reported this, and I thought it was insane. It can't be true. Kamala, is this true? And then let her respond. Let her say yes or no and be like, and then if she says it's not true at all, he could have just said, you got CNN. Wow, CNN said this. And now you can deal with defamation or whatever you want to deal with. But here's what you have to, okay. You want to vote for Kamala Harris? CNN says she will use federal funding for gender transition surgeries for illegal immigrants.
One of the interesting realities of the fact that her campaign basically had no interviews. I mean, it was like she and Tim Walz did something like 25 when during the same period Trump and Vance had done over 60, is that she will now no one will be able to say after this that she hasn't sat for any interviews, right? And they're blitzing them. They're doing them back to back to back very quickly. And so nothing can really sustain going viral. And it almost helps obfuscate. I can't even talk. Obfuscate. I'm so sorry. How unclear her positions are, because there's just too many. You're never going to get a clear answer. You don't really know what she said in the interviews. They're all pretty generic, but she is now talking to the press, so you can't criticize her of that. I mean, it's almost brilliant, except for the fact that if the objective is to win over undecided voters who repeatedly, consistently, for weeks have said, we do not know enough about her, then it's sort of a failure. I mean, this seems more like a move to protect her ego than to actually perform a successful campaign.
Is it my imagination, or does she look kind of like really tense and almost like terrified in that 60 minutes?
She looks sad.
Yeah, I think she's like terrified of just saying the wrong thing.
That's the reality.
I don't want to comment on her looks because she's a woman and I don't want to be called sexist. But something about when she opens her eyes and like her forehead,
Botox.
I like a lot of the like smiling and nodding. Like, yes, see? I mean, I do this a lot. My verbal tick, and this is true for a lot of women, is to end your sentence as a question. Say like, blah, 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 right? But for hers, she has gotten out of that by like smile and nodding. Being like, as the leader of the country, you have to build coalitions. Like, she is looking for that affirmation from whoever she's talking to, but she's also not doing the verbal tick of ending in a question.
Also, on these interviews, on the 60 Minutes interview in particular, I do think we need to give credit where it is due to Brian Whitaker, who was conducting this interview for 60 Minutes, because most other journalists on the left, whether it be from Politico, MSNBC, or CNN, who either had this opportunity or in the press pool around Kamala Harris, do not take their opportunities to ask Kamala Harris half-decent questions at all. And I commend Brian Whitaker for actually taking the opportunity when presented it. And in case it wasn't obvious, the reason why a lot of these people don't do it is because although they might have some beef with Kamala Harris, not being as openly as progressive as they may want her to be, they believe the ends justify the means, and that means that they will not critically cover Kamala Harris because that will mean beating Donald Trump. And that is the only thing that matters to them. So regardless of how bad Kamala Harris may be, whether or not she's talking about Medicaid for all right now, whether or not she's talking about fracking right now, all of that is forgiven because the ends justify the means in her needing to win this election. Otherwise, what they believe we get, who knows what, because the first round wasn't too bad.
So what do we actually get with a Kamala Harris victory? I don't think any of us reasonably know, other than what we already have over the past 3.5 years. Mm-hmm. Is she just going to follow in the footsteps of Joe Biden? She's already the tie-breaking vote in the Senate. So the only reasonable conclusion for anybody, regardless of any interview she does, she was on The View, she's on Howard Stern, she's doing late night shows, is whatever is happening now will continue to happen. Are you happy with that? Yes or no?
Fourth term of Barack Obama is what I consider it. And I think the Democrats have been consistent with their top of the ticket. I think you're going to get consistent product. It's going to be Obama. It's going to be Joe Biden, and Kamala Harris is just next in line.
I think she'll be the same as Biden with a slight drift to the left because of who she is likely to hire and be staffed by. And I think that is something that the voter doesn't always take into account. Again, going back to the undecideds, if the impression is all we know about her is that she's Biden's VP, the conclusion that this would just be more of the same is totally reasonable, unless she is willing to come out hard and attack Joe Biden and be like, look, I was in his administration, but he did not do these things well. And she's not willing to do that. She's sort of passive aggressively. She'll say, like, well, I'm clearly not Joe Biden. But anyways, here are the things that we did, and I was the last one in the room for these big decisions. I mean, she wants the glory of having the experience of having been in the White House without having to take accountability for the challenges that Americans are currently facing. And I just don't think that she has effectively messaged her way out of being another Joe Biden, and the voters clearly did not want another Joe Biden.
It's funny because she doesn't tout that I was the last person in the room on all the major decisions point anymore at any of her
I know,
rallies.
weirdly, she dropped that one.
Yeah, that just fell out of the picture very quickly. As soon as they dropped Joe Biden like a hot potato.
I just think it's odd. I can't name a single one of her core principles. And that concerns me if she's going to be president of the United States. What concerns me with all this sort of like, you're not getting any information on anything really substantive. She seems to be blowing with the wind, is that she's maybe going to get in there and she's going to get just sort of pushed around, or you're going to just get more of, the same establishment kind of stuff from the national security state and the administrative state. So yeah, I have a concern. Like, yeah, I have no idea who she is. Mm-hmm. What are her principles?
I think that's one of the challenges, having not been a very established federal level politician before this, right? She was only in the Senate for one term. It wasn't that long before she decided to run for president and then eventually became VP. And she doesn't really talk about her time as a prosecutor. She talks about that she was a prosecutor and that Trump's a felon. But I mean, I know a lot of people who, Tulsi Gabbard was famously the one who during the Democratic primary pushed back and said, hey, these are the things you did as a prosecutor that were abhorrent and they are not in alignment with her values.
That disturbs me, the fact that she's a prosecutor and her mindset seems to be that the solution to society's problems can be solved through criminal law. And when she was, I think, like a DA in California, one of the things that she did as a parent, I found abhorrent, and she doesn't have kids, but one of the things she did is she criminalized truancy such that the parents were criminally liable for their kids being truant. And I know whatever, we're not supposed to like say, people who haven't had kids, shouldn't weigh in on kids. But as a parent, I don't know any parent that would criminalize their kids showing up late to school. Like, that's coming from somebody who just doesn't understand kids. And I do think it makes a difference if you have had kids or haven't had kids, because anybody who's a parent gets really annoyed with people who've never had kids stepping in and telling you how to raise their kids, because you just don't know. You just haven't had the experience. And that really stuck out to me from her period as a prosecutor. Mm-hmm. Like, you're punishing parents.
And if she's so proud of her time as a prosecutor, why isn't she saying, and if I'm president nationally, parents whose kids are truant? Like, she stands by her policies and her records that she implemented when she had the most influence over a single government, aka when she was a prosecutor in California. Why not? Why not talk about this all the time? Tim Walz did one debate with J.D. Vance, reference his time in Minnesota constantly. I mean, she doesn't really even point to anything. She could skip the Biden administration and point to California, except she's not proud of what she did in California or in the Senate, in my opinion.
I do think it's funny that we know exactly what Trump wants to do because he just yells it all the time. Kamala Harris doesn't tell us at all what she wants to do. Don't get me wrong. They've got, they copied the Biden agenda and put it on their website, but her past statements are all wishy-washy. But she does lie about what Trump wants to do. So if you're, I got to tell you, if you have been one of the very rare, if mythical being, a Kamala supporter going back to 2019, you would have experienced every political position imaginable, and you'd have no way to conclude what she actually wants to do. Then you would have believed her when she lies about what Trump wants to do, and you'd have no idea what he wants to do either. So what are you really voting on? Well, I got it. It's vibes. That's it.
It is vibes.
It's vibes. Okay, well, I don't care about that. I'm concerned about the border and the economy and hurricanes and war. I'd like to solve these problems, and maybe then once we've solved all the problems, we can relax and order some wings or something.
Right, and if we weren't being bombarded by extreme weather, a vibes campaign might have hung on a little bit longer through October. I mean, I really think they wouldn't have put her on this media blitz if they could have avoided it, because inevitably they know she does not interview that well. If she was so charismatic, they would have had her front and center on everything all the time from day one.
So we have this. We'll jump to the story from the LA Times. CBS News says Trump is dropping out of 60 Minutes interview after accepting invitation. Former President Trump is pulling out of a planned interview with 60 Minutes. They plan to devote a full-hour special on Monday to interviews with both Trump and his opponent, Kamala Harris, but the network's news division announced Tuesday that Trump is no longer willing to participate. After accepting 60 Minutes' request to be interviewed by Scott Pelley, the campaign spokesperson notified 60 Minutes today the former president would not sit for an interview with the broadcast. CBS News said the invitation for Trump still stands. Harris is scheduled to sit for an interview with 60 Minutes correspondent Bill Whitaker. Of course, we already saw this. This is from last week or so. I wonder why. So Stephen Chung says 60 Minutes begged for an interview, even after they were caught lying about Hunter Biden's laptop back in 2020. They were initial discussions, but nothing was ever scheduled or locked in. They also insisted on doing live fact checking, which is unprecedented. I got to say, having looked at, having now seen the poll, the reaction in the betting markets, I bet the Trump camp is rather happy to have not done an interview and are more than willing to sit back and just let Kamala Harris stew. Kamala Harris is desperately trying to do these interviews because she did not define herself in any meaningful way. And Democrats are just, they're way down on immigration and the economy. These are the factors that Gallup says, according to their projections from all the past elections, will lead to a victory in November. So that being said, I do think it's kind of strange where we're currently at with Nate Silver giving the edge to Kamala Harris, Alan Lichtman saying Kamala Harris is going to win, and then Gallup's polling system, which is an informal prediction saying Trump is going to win, and Kamala Harris desperately trying to maintain a position in the media despite not having any position to sell. I don't understand.
So I obviously work in media. I love interviewing people. I think public figures and politicians should give more time to the media. However, the Trump campaign had nothing to gain from going on to this 60 Minutes interview. He wasn't going to win over any extra voters from CBS News at all. Kamala Harris did have the opportunity to win over voters from the CBS News audience. So I think this was a smart move, frankly, from the Trump campaign. He's done a ton of media already. And we're seeing Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, when they do give interviews, struggle mightily. Tim Walz also struggled in this interview on 60 Minutes.
Trump has already been on 60 Minutes. He did it in 2016. He did it in 2020. They were hostile to him always. Like, what is the point of going through the same song and dance over and over again? I get that for 60 Minutes, this is their chance to say, like, we are a routine stop along the presidential campaign media tour, right? Like, some sort of hallmark that they have a right to do these interviews. But, you know, they're just another corporate institution, and maybe they shouldn't have treated him so biasly in the past. Like, it doesn't make sense to me that he would waste his time doing an interview with an outlet that he's already done this with before.
So now that we have sufficiently, grilled Kamala Harris over not having any strong positions, showed some of the clips from the 60 Minutes interview, let's go back to the Daily Beast, who said Trump gets unhinged, even for him, over Kamala Harris' 60 Minutes interview, because the only way they can actually tackle the media right now is to shift it onto Trump, because Kamala did rather poorly. The Daily Beast says Donald Trump, who agreed to interview with CBS, and he canceled this, we know. He said the interview on 60 Minutes with comrade Kamala Harris is considered by many of those who reviewed it the worst interview they have ever seen. She literally had no idea what she was talking about. And it was an embarrassment to our country that a major party candidate would be so completely inept. In addition, her incompetence on helping people through the devastation of Hurricane Helene is being reviewed as by far the worst in American history, even worse than Katrina, if that is possible. I can't imagine anybody living in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Florida, or Tennessee voting for her. Pollsters saying that the anti or negative vote in those places, and even places not affected, but with people watching what took place, will be heavily against her. This is good news because November 5th is the most important day in the history of our country, and we cannot bear 4 more years of incompetence. Make America great again. So they say Trump seemingly wants no part of that level of scrutiny. The Republican nominee for president accepted an invitation to a similar sit-down, but then decided not to participate. However, it's funny. A CBS spokesperson claims this. Trump's campaign says they never agreed to do it in the first place. They want to mention that Stephen Chung of the Trump campaign said it's fake news. The Trump team was reportedly worried about 60 Minutes fact-checking the interview. During 60 Minutes, Harris advised voters, blah, blah, blah. So here's the point. Where in Trump's response is it warranted to say that he gets unhinged even for him? More importantly, Trump is unhinged. Here's his response. Trump should do the interview. What's your critique? What did he do wrong? The reality is, the 60 Minutes interview was bad. The betting markets show it. We're going to see it reflected in the polls. And the corporate press that wants to favor the Democratic Party has nothing to say about Kamala. So they just say, Trump is bad still for whatever reason. Trump criticizing Kamala is a really, really bad thing. Thank you and have a nice day.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing that they haven't reached any level of fear-mongering fatigue after doing this for almost a decade now around Trump, where it's just like, I don't know, if they didn't believe us before, I don't know, now this is really going to convince somebody. Even for him, even for Trump, this is unhinged.
Right. Maybe this is just like, the third pressing of the olive. There's just literally no oil to be extracted. They're making olive flour at this point.
I mean, I don't think the media component of this could get fatigued, right? I mean, it's very easy to be like, every day the theme is Trump is bad, and you get extra points if you can make him seem really, really bad. I think it's the voters. I think the voters are fatigued of being constantly told to fear everything. And especially right now, you know, Trump posts tweet after not deciding not to do an interview with an outlet. A major hurricane is about to hit Florida, where maybe people you love and care about live. Like, these things clearly are not the same. One is actually concerning and actually fearful. Trump has been tweeting nonstop or truthing or whatever for almost a decade now. I mean, I just don't think that it carries the same weight. And I think you see that disconnect in the media, what they're willing to say versus what people are looking for. Again, in the rise of these alternative platforms, I think that's why so many people are looking to Twitter for news, or X for news. There's a report out on Axios about the fact that young voters or young TikTok users depend on it as a source of news, which is fascinating, right? Like, part of it is they're already hooked up, they're really into the app, but also they don't look to cable news. They're not taking an hour out of their day to like read the Daily Beast front page. They are going towards these other platforms. I don't know where you get your news from. And I mean, you have a teenage son. Is he interested in politics, or is he?
He just stays away from it all. And
Smart kid.
I don't blame him. You know, I don't. This narrative, like you're saying, over the last, I mean, they just keep on playing it over and over again. This guy's unhinged. Whatever the merits of it, I'm like fatigued as a voter from it. And like, I would rather have the media address the fundamental question: is why is this race so close if this guy's so horrible and he's completely unhinged? Like, there's this sort of implicit narrative in there, I think, that they think like half the country is a bunch of deplorable idiots or something like that. And they're not looking any deeper. They're just saying, this guy's unhinged, he's scary, January 6th. And like, okay, well, what's the root of this?
On that, I do really think the Democrats are getting diminishing returns on their attacks on Trump that are saying, oh, he's a threat to democracy. Because again, almost half the country supports this guy. And it's like, do we seriously think that half the country views him in this way? Same with January 6th. I think we're hearing dwindling amounts of those specific attacks on him. We're seeing a zeroing in on the Project 2025 fear-mongering. All the liberal podcasts I listen to have ads pre-rolled in front of them fear-mongering around Project 2025 and what they're trying to accomplish. But yeah, the January 6th stuff in particular, with how much they were focusing on it in the past, and how they aren't anymore. That's also why the Liz Cheney endorsement is so important, because the reason she flipped was because of January 6th. Mm-hmm. So
her and Kinzinger, right? I mean, they were the only two Republicans that were on that committee, and they don't think it won them any strength among their voters or their party. I mean, the idea that January 6th is the only bad thing that's ever happened to America in the last 4 years is just fundamentally wrong.
All of this is very dumb, because what's the real threat to democracy? Kamala Harris didn't win any electoral votes in any primary, but she's still the Democratic incumbent. The Democrats want to pack the Supreme Court and nobody's blinking an eye. But no, Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. So again, they don't feel ironic. There's they don't look in the mirror at all. They don't consider, oh, wait, what? And then they're also trying to overturn the filibuster. Oh, no, but the Republicans are a threat to democracy. So I don't know, not a hint of feeling like a hypocrite at all coming from these Democrats. And to zero in on what Kamala Harris's response to the hurricane so far has been, it's been to complain about Governor Ron DeSantis in Florida not answering his call. Mm-hmm. That's the response that we've seen from Kamala Harris so far, politicizing this tragedy that we're seeing in Florida and complaining that busy Ron DeSantis, I hope she's doing something more important than what? Talking to Kamala Harris to accomplish what? Nothing? For her to just tell people that she's supporting him? Nothing. Whatever she was going to do, talking to Ron DeSantis isn't going to change anything with that. So,
indeed, I think the Ron DeSantis thing. I think Ron was right, and Kamala Harris is the vice president. She's not the president. The president should be calling Ron DeSantis and asking about what's going on. And clearly, she's suffering bad internal polling. The response to Helene was very, very bad. So she's trying to call Ron DeSantis to make some kind of political gain. And he says, I'm not interested in this.
Well, Tim, you see, she's the acting president anyway, because Joe Biden's barely there. So
agreed.
Ron DeSantis doesn't know who to talk to.
She can call to invoke the 25th Amendment and have Joe Biden forced to step down, and then I will respect her trying to call Ron DeSantis.
Well, how about she just what about like stop campaigning for a moment and actually focus on emergency hurricane relief. Appalachia got killed, and the government just really wasn't there. And now we've got this major superstorm coming in.
To be fair, the government was there for Lebanon.
Yeah.
You know,
and they were there.
Prioritize the people who really matter.
And they were there to stop you from helping your neighbor in Appalachia. That's what they seemed to, one of the things that they seem to be doing down there.
Indeed. And then they call it fake news. I mean, there's videos of people who want to come in and offer help, and they're being denied. And then when this is fascinating. I don't. Did you guys see Karine Jean-Pierre rage quit the press briefing? So she gets asked by Peter Doocy, and he asks a very basic question. He says something like, Biden says your budget reflects your values. Well, he was able to find $157 million without Congress returning for Lebanon, but only $20 million is allocated towards hurricane relief. What does that say about his values? And then Karine Jean-Pierre calls it misinformation. Then, within like a minute, actually inverts her argument and agrees that there's not that much money left. They have enough just for Milton, and then after that, they're probably exhausted. And then she gets angry and says, you know, we should get more funding, but maybe, you know, and if it's not there, maybe that's what you want. And then she storms off. And then people made fun of her weird pinstripe suit, I guess, or whatever.
It was not a good look. She looks like she's dressing like Lori Lightfoot, the mayor of Chicago, who was, again, she wore a lot of pantsuits, and it was not
and you know, it's not fair that you if you ever try to wear a pinstripe, they're going to call you Beetlejuice, because they called her Beetlejuice and they called Lori Lightfoot Beetlejuice. Hey. Now, just the suit's okay. Don't make fun of the suit. All right?
Look, pinstripes are a bold-fashioned choice, and we love a risk taker in that sense. But sometimes you can't pull everything off, and that includes continuously trying to spin the narrative here. I mean, this is a total tangent, but Karine Jean-Pierre is also not an effective communicator. I mean, it was really a step down after Jen Psaki left. Jen Psaki, you know, circled back to everything. On the other hand, she was pretty good.
I mean, really circle back to everything?
No, of course not. That was her.
Say that
we'll
and do
circle
nothing.
back. We'll circle back. But like, you know, she, even though I don't agree with probably everything she said, she was effective, right? There's a reason that she could then exit gracefully to go get her own show. That's not true of Karine Jean-Pierre, and they haven't swapped her out. And again, if this is the Biden-Harris's understanding of who is the best suited to communicate to the public, no wonder Kamala Harris is struggling in these interviews, because whoever is prepping her is doing a bad job.
When I worked in sales, I was taught whenever I had no idea about something somebody was asking me, I was supposed to tell them, I think I know the answer, but I want to go confirm and I'll circle back with you after. So
look, there are ways to do this. Like, if you don't know the answer to something, just listen to the question, be like, that is a great question. Let me go confirm for sure, or let me ask the person who does. I want to make sure I'm giving you the best information. Like, you can not have the answer and make the people feel like you're still on the team. It's avoiding the conversation at all that's worse, and that's basically been this White House's policy.
The thing about Jen Psaki that pisses me off is that she went from working for Joe Biden to MSNBC in like 2 weeks right after the job. So she didn't even skip over something. She didn't take a year off to try to put up some facade like, no, we're not totally connected. I'm not going straight from Joe Biden's White House to the newsroom to speak on his behalf.
She didn't even write a like courtesy biography.
Yeah, write a book or
something.
Something. Maybe go to some other news source, like a right-wing news source, to be their token liberal. But no, she went straight to MSNBC. So something to keep in mind with the incestuous relationship between media and the White House.
I do want to pull this up. This is from the Post-Millennial. So Kamala Harris goes on The View. And in it, she in this interview, she mentions hurricane response and how she called Governor DeSantis. Well, in a surprising moment, I guess, which is inflaming the conspiracy that Joe Biden is secretly MAGA and is trying to sabotage Kamala, he says in a statement, I've spoken with the governor. He's doing a great job. So according to Post Millennial, they say Biden says DeSantis is doing a great job with hurricane response after Kamala accuses Florida governor of playing political games. We all saw Joe Biden put on that MAGA hat, and now we have this. So this is the clip. Here we go.
Florida has been cooperative. He said he's gotten all that he needs. I talked to him again yesterday, and I said, no, you're doing a great job. It's all being done well. We thank you for it. And I literally gave my personal phone number to call. So I don't know. There was a rough start in some places, but every governor from Florida to North Carolina has been fully cooperative and supportive and acknowledged what this team is doing.
So let's just break this down. Joe Biden calls Ron DeSantis. They have a good phone call. He says he's doing a good job. Kamala Harris tries to call Ron DeSantis. He says, I'm not interested in talking to you. This is political nonsense. Kamala then tries playing that up in the press that, well, he's playing political games. Joe Biden just smacked her down, effectively confirming the president did contact Florida over the hurricane response. Ron DeSantis worked perfectly alongside Joe Biden to do what they need to be doing right now. Hopefully it's enough. And Kamala Harris is doing God knows what.
I want to double check the timeline on this, but to see if she came out with those comments before this, just so I got this all lined up. But I don't know if this is on purpose or not, but it would be really funny if it were, because I know the Joe Biden White House staffers hate the Kamala Harris staffers. There's a lot of beef between the two coalitions within the Democrat Party. Obviously, the whole Joe Biden camp knows they got knifed. So you have to wonder if Joe Biden's pulling some of these moves to spite some of the Kamala Harris people. The Trump hat thing, saying, oh, no, Ron DeSantis, we had a good chat before.
He did that. He appeared in the briefing room spontaneously and was like, she was involved in all kinds of things. She was deeply involved in my administration, despite the fact that she's desperately trying to distance herself.
Like the opposite of what they're trying to do. And this old man Biden, I'm growing a soft spot for him after he decided to drop out.
I mean, he's very different now that he is in legacy building. I do not have a future in politics mode. I mean, I don't trust him at all. On the other hand, it is much funnier watching him basically throw small jabs at Kamala Harris every time she tries to pretend that he doesn't exist.
I like Joe Biden now.
I think he's just being his old ruthless self. I think he's been a ruthless politician
I think so too.
His entire life, and now he's got this geriatric routine that he can run.
And he's not seeking another term.
And
he can be ruthless without facing any kind of consequence.
Right.
I saw this, okay? Where was I? I was in, where were we just hanging out? Pittsburgh. We were in Pittsburgh. And because we went to the Butler rally. And on the way back, you guys know I'm a big poker player, so we took a stop over at Rivers, and you got to walk through security. And as we're walking out, an old man walks through the exit as the security guard woman is yelling at him, and he just keeps going. Beeline straight for the casino. And you knew when you saw him that this guy could hear her. He was not some bumbling old man confused. He just didn't want to go through security and then to chase him down. And I feel kind of like that's what Joe Biden's doing right now. Do you guys remember when Johnny Knoxville did that Jackass thing where he fakes being an old person and then tries getting away with crazy shenanigans because he's an old guy? I think at this point, Biden's just he's checked out. He's a ruthless politician, but now he's got the fumbling, bumbling Joe. You know what? I'm going to roll with it. I'll play into it.
I mean, Kamala tried to stab him in the back, and he's going down and trying to distance herself from him, and he's bear hugging her, taking him down with him.
I loved it when he put on the Trump hat.
Yeah, it
said,
was outrageous.
you are my VP, and you do not thrive without me. I mean, again, I don't have any sympathy for Joe Biden, but the DNC threw him a funeral and shipped him off to California, only to end up with Kamala Harris there. And there is so clearly tension between the two of them. It is becoming the new best reality show in America if you're looking at it.
I don't know why. I just remembered the horrible trade deal Biden got us in with Russia for the WNBA player, for that Russian arms dealer, Victor Boot, who's now working again. So actually, I take that all back.
It was Brittany Griner, right?
Brittany Griner, worst trade deal in history ever, and now this guy's back to being an arms dealer and selling arms to Yemen.
Biden was.
It's funny because I know, and that's literally the Red Sea conflict. I'm seeing these Democrats. They're like, what wars have Joe Biden got us into? And it's like, well, I mean, we're funding the Ukraine war, and there's U.S. special forces in Europe. There's U.S. troops being deployed to Europe over the war in Ukraine. We're funding that. Then we've got the Israel conflict where we tried to build a pier in Gaza, and we've sent $358 million to Lebanon over their humanitarian crisis, which I don't know where that money's coming from. So we are deeply involved in a lot of these wars, but largely the official operation in the United States that you could call a limited war is the operation in the Red Sea over the Houthi rebels. So we had to get back this basketball player who had a pot vape? Is that what it was?
Yeah, it was
Allegedly.
And a vape pen. And look, I don't want to see Brittany Griner locked up in Russia. I'm not a fan of what Russia does or what they're doing. Okay. But you don't trade the merchant of death, which they call the guy, for a basketball player. It's just a bad deal. You said the worst trade deal ever. It's just funny because it's literally a sports trade deal. It's like, well, okay, we want the basketball player back, and you can have the arms dealer who is now arming rebels.
Well, moreover, this just encourages more bad behavior. Now that Putin sees he's only going to take more advantage of us. He got out one of his top guys. There was another trade deal with a
bigger
German,
prisoner swap later, and this was a huge deal because we got all kinds of Americans back, right? But
including
we also
journalist
gave
Evan
up so many. Gershkovich, we got back Paul Whelan. There were several. But we gave up so many people, and most of the people who were wrongfully detained in Russia that we got back were taken into Russian custody during Biden's administration, which means that Russia was like, we sense weakness in the water. As far as I remember, of the 4 Americans who we got released, only Paul Whelan had been detained not under Biden. So what does that say to you? That not only was Biden... his presence in the White House seemed to communicate some sort of weakness on the negotiating table, but then he followed through by being weak at the negotiating table. I just don't think this is what we want here. And I do not think that Kamala Harris communicates anything more effective on the global stage. I don't know how you feel about it. Do you think Kamala Harris is our future power negotiator on behalf of all people in the world?
I'm just worried that she is going to be influenced by the establishment. The military industrial complex, whatever you want to call it, because she doesn't seem to me to have any core principles. That's what really, really, really concerns me.
You don't believe her when she says, but my values haven't changed.
No, I don't, because I think your values change all the time with whatever's politically expedient.
But what about Trump? And I hate to do the what about, but do you feel Trump is any better off in that circumstance?
Trump, to me, from what I can tell, doesn't like foreign wars, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't remember us getting into a war during his presidency. I remember him assassinating the Iranian head of, Quds or whatever.
Yeah, Qasem Soleimani.
Yeah, the guy he assassinated. But he's curiously, I think, of that sort of isolationist school, which I welcome. My entire life, I think the United States has been involved in some kind of war. And I think, right now, I think things could spin out of control and you could get World War III. I hope not, right? I hope that's just like crazy speculation, but you got a hot war in the Middle East. You've got the Ukrainians pushing into Russia, and the stuff.
And the Red Sea shutting down shipping. I mean, the Houthi rebels in the Red Sea.
What is she going to do about that?
Is you going to vote for Trump?
I don't know if I'm voting at all. I don't know.
What state
What
state are you living in?
I mean, it doesn't matter in New York, right? New York, it's like...
It matters down ticket.
It does.
Yeah.
Wait, depends on what Brooklyn?
Brooklyn, man. Brooklyn's so democratic.
So yeah, even down ticket, your vote doesn't even matter.
Yeah, like you go...
Vote anyway.
It matters. It matters. They say in AOC's district, you have something like 150,000 Republicans, and that is around the amount of people who vote. Mm-hmm. Like AOC ends up winning her congressional seat with, let's actually pull up the numbers. Let me pull up Ballotpedia. For what is she, New York 14?
Something like that, right? But when she first ran, she was running against a guy who didn't even live in New York. He was like, I think he was like down here somewhere, basically.
82,000 votes.
Yeah.
82,000 votes to win her seat in 2022. 775,000 people there, and they say that there's around 150 or so thousand more conservative, moderate to conservative leaning individuals. If people just told them, bro, your vote matters substantially more because only 82,000. Tina Forte, the Republican, got 31,000 votes. 31,000. You only needed another 50K out of the 775. Let's just say out of the 675,000 available after the fact. You just need 50K of those, and boom, a Republican wins New York 14. It can be done. Not that I think the Republican Party is doing great things, but I'm saying if you're in these jurisdictions, don't think that just because it's D plus 25 or D plus 30, you're going to lose. Your vote always matters. It's the demoralization. That's what creates these problems. When Republicans say we're not going to spend money there, what's the point? Trump's got ads. I don't know if it's PACs or whatever in New York. So it matters. Although I'm not telling you have to vote for Donald Trump. I make the argument to Ian, because Ian hates Trump. He watches that debate, and then he starts saying, why vote for Trump? All the guy does is talk about his ego. Oh, nobody leaves my rallies. I got the best rallies. And I think the Trump supporters got to understand that there's a lot of people like Ian. They don't like Trump's attitude, okay? But I told Ian, you know why you're going to vote for Donald Trump? Because RFK Jr. is in the administration. Because Tulsi Gabbard is. Because Elon Musk is. And you basically have this eclectic administration staring you in the face. If you only care about war, you're like, I'm sick of the wars. Tulsi Gabbard, she's right there. She's advising Donald Trump, and she's going to be in that administration. That's what I'm excited for. RFK Jr., Make America Healthy Again. He's saying we've got environmental toxins, plastics leaching into our food. We've got chronic illness and big pharma exploiting it. And I'm like, man, right there. So I got to say, if you don't like Donald Trump, I got bad news for you. You might say Kamala, what was it? Howard Stern on his show said, I can't believe this. It's a close election. He's like, I'm going to vote for you, but I'd vote for that wall over there. I got bad news for you. You may think Trump is the worst guy ever. Okay. If you vote for Kamala Harris, guess who you're getting in her coalition? You know who you're getting in that coalition, right?
Who am I getting in?
Dick Cheney. That's right. The Kamala Harris, Liz and Dick Cheney coalition with the Lincoln Project and other neocons, George W. Bush, who've joined alongside Kamala Harris to protect what? The military-industrial complex? Look, you come to me and you say, I just can't stand Donald Trump. He's a bad guy. He's crass. He's crude. He's insulting. He lacks decorum. His tweets, his posts, he besmirches the office. And I'm like, okay. I understand your thoughts and feelings on this. How would you like an RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard administration? Because I got to tell you, I would want nothing more. And if I can't have them directly, having them as advisors in the administration and overseeing large components of it sounds like grand slam. So rag on Trump. I think for me, I'll put it this way. We can throw everything out the window. No new wars under Donald Trump. Okay, there were problems with drone strikes. There were problems with drone strike transparency. I will concede that 100% to all the libertarians who bring it up every single time. No new wars. So if you're a realist and you're looking at the margins, what is my percentage gain from my actions? I look at it, I like poker, right? Poker has EV positive, expected value positive, or negative. Is the move I make going to give me a positive or a negative outcome? You're not going to get President Tulsi Gabbard right now. I'd love that. You're not going to get President RFK Jr. right now. I'd like that too. Okay. I mean, they're both a little progressive in some areas, more so than I'd like. But I actually honestly prefer them a little bit more than Trump. But Trump is the more likely candidate to win. He's got the X factor and the charisma and the base. And so I just say this. Donald Trump is the first time in my lifetime I've seen what I would describe as a net positive presidency. The economy was doing really well, but there were problems with spending. Deficit was going up. That's a bad thing. Economy was a good thing. Trying to bring about peace, especially in the Korean Peninsula, no new wars, Abraham Accords. I mean, Elaad, for heaven's sake, economic normalization with Israel and Muslim nations. That to me was shockingly incredible. Not perfect, lots of problems. But if we're looking at a 1% to 2% net positive, I'm like, wow. The past administrations of my life have been net negative for so many reasons. George W. Bush, Iraq and Afghanistan, disasters. Barack Obama, the big corporate bailouts, disaster. And escalation of war in the Middle East itself. And then Donald Trump comes in with his loud mouth and his naughty words, and he insults people, and a lot of people don't like it. Then we got no new wars. And I didn't vote for him in 2016, and it wasn't till 2020 when I was like, I got people screaming in my ears, if you're so big on foreign policy and you like Tulsi Gabbard, but Tulsi Gabbard is out, Trump's the no war candidate. What do we have under Joe Biden, Kamala Harris? We have this fake war. I call it fake in that they're claiming we're not actually at war. Dude, we are at war with Russia. No one in their right mind who analyzes geopolitics and conflict is looking at the Ukraine-Russia conflict and saying that's just Ukraine. It has nothing to do with the United States. No, it is NATO versus Russia, period. Then we have the escalation of conflict with Israel. I don't believe that. I mean, you look, it's fascinating that Kamala Harris is 2 days before October 7th putting out a tweet about how she's going to give $400 million to the poor people of Lebanon. It's like there's a war going on. OK, it is a conflict involving a U.S. ally. Why are you blasting this message out to the people? It's almost like you're sabotaging your own campaign. But I digress. The conflict in the Red Sea, limited warfare. the expansion of conflict in the Middle East, leading us to potentially World War III. Kamala Harris says in the CBS interview, Iran is our greatest adversary, and we could be inching towards World War III, or something to that effect. And I'm like, great. Trump leaves office, and once again, we are on a massive downward spiral towards oblivion that wasn't happening under Donald Trump. So that's why I'm just like, criticize Trump every day of the week. He deserves it often. But no new wars. RFK Jr. Tulsi Gabbard, I'll take it. Sorry.
Yeah, he's not a warmonger, is he?
No, and you know what it is? I think Trump's got an ego. I think he's got an ego problem that can be a positive. Now, I know a lot of these Trump diehards, they say, no, Tim, Trump's altruistic. He doesn't have an ego. He does not. Never going to believe it for a second. The guy's got his name on all these buildings everywhere. He certainly believes in himself. He thinks he's smarter than a lot of people. And I'm not mad at him for that, nor trying to disrespect him for believing that. He certainly is smarter than a lot of people. He's proven it. He's a billionaire, right? But I see in Donald Trump a man who wants to be loved and respected. And the path to doing that is effectively solving problems. My view of Donald Trump is that he's sitting there being like, okay, we're going to get this war taken care of. I think Trump was sitting there being like, how do we solve the Israel-Palestine issue? And then you got all these military and deep state people being like, it's impossible. You're not going to do it. We're going to compromise. And in Trump's mind, he's thinking, I want to be in a parade where everyone's clapping and cheering, saying peace in the Middle East. I want everyone clapping and cheering, saying peace in the Korean Peninsula, avoiding war. He wants people to love him. And that's something a lot of these politicians don't actually care about. They want your vote, and they don't care if you hate them. They expect you to. But Trump wants that recognition. He wants his name to be recognized. It's a good thing. It means that his motives are you, the people, because he is desperate for that affection. Whereas the politicians are like, we don't know, we don't care about you. We want to extract value and prop our lives up.
One of the really effective things that Trump does is that he says so many things that he could be so many things, different things to so many different people, and people could project whatever they want onto him. Tim, just a quick rebuttal to that. I wouldn't prefer RFK Jr. or Tulsi Gabbard to Trump. And the things I like Trump the most are things that I think they'd say are bad about him, sure. Which is why it's this interesting reversal. I'm sure they would have said the first Trump term was very neoconish because he had people like John Bolton, Mike Pompeo, people, maybe not John Bolton, he had Nikki Haley in the UN.
He did have Bolton.
I'd expect to see more of these people or people like them in the next administration as well. And I think he believed in peace through strength.
Yes.
Which is why we had peace. And that's not what I think RFK or Tulsi Gabbard.
No, and I agree. But my point is this: you're a Bolton bro, right?
Yeah, I like to. I believe in peace through strength.
So
good rebranding.
So you're voting for Trump, right?
I abstained from voting because I'm a journalist and have some shallow hiccups over that. Do you like that? Do you like that? Because hey, if I'm Brian Whitaker, I can't say, hey, I ever voted. If you're a journalist, you could, yeah, take that. Isn't it a nice cop out?
Okay, but I can respect that, and I actually several years ago when I was doing field reporting interviews, I felt the exact same way. But my position is, I would vote for Donald Trump for his track record on peace. Far from perfect, but the best I've ever seen. Now I'm just like, I've never been more excited for a presidential administration because Tulsi Gabbard represented my values largely when it came to foreign policy more than Trump. Trump had Bolton. I did not like it. You are correct.
But it was peace. It resulted in peace.
No, he got rid of Bolton. Bolton stabbed him in the back, and he said that was a mistake. Okay? Tulsi Gabbard was who I wanted to get, and when I wanted to be president, I supported her. I'm like, She had gun policies I wasn't a complete fan of, but there's a few things that I think she could turn around on. And I think she's proven absolutely with her track record as of the past 4 years that I am correct that she is a good candidate in what we are looking to achieve. With RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard joining Trump, I feel that disaffected liberals and post-liberals now have an easy path towards why Donald Trump is the right vote, because it's not about Trump. It's about an administration we've been hoping for our entire lives.
Tulsi Gabbard has said that she doesn't believe we should defend Taiwan in case of a Chinese attack. If she was ever elected brought up into any position that mattered relative to the military.
Stop. I already like her.
That would be so weak, and that would just be the perfect letter to Xi. Dear Xi, we will not come to Taiwan's defense. Please go invade them. I couldn't think of a better thing for Xi Jinping to want to say. A clearer message to them that, hey, Xi Jinping, the South China Sea is all all yours.
right,
I, Tulsi Gabbard, am weak and limp-wristed. I will not challenge your authority at all in the South China Sea. And guess what? Persians, Iranians, do whatever you want in the Middle East. That's all yours. Her message to Russia is, hey, I don't want to fund or support Ukraine at all. You could take more than the Donbass. You could take, make your way to Kiev. I don't want to get involved, is her position.
I already told you I like Tulsi Gabbard. You're not going to sell me anymore.
I think it's just opposite to what we've been seeing from Trump in his first term. And that's the thing about Trump. You could project onto him what you want from him.
No, but listen. And I think you're taking a harsher stance on what Tulsi Gabbard is saying and what she means and how the resolution with Ukraine and Taiwan would come about. The resolution with Ukraine is not fund more war. Trump said it best. I want the killing to stop. I see Trump's resolution with this conflict of going to Russia and saying, you're stopping or we're starting. And I'm going to tell Ukraine to shut up, and we're going to figure out how we get this resolved. What does Russia want? They need land access to their industrial and naval port in Sevastopol.
Yeah, but while Trump is you're stopping or we're starting, I think Tulsi Gabbard is you're stopping or we're also definitely stopping. So
I don't think so.
Oh, definitely. I don't think Tulsi Gabbard, even if Putin doesn't want.
Have you heard her talk about the Middle East?
I've got to question Tulsi Gabbard when she ran for president. I went up to her in New Hampshire and asked her about the Taiwan thing specifically, and she said, "No, we have no reason to be involved with defending Taiwan." And I think that's a tough.
What are our interests in defending Taiwan?
It's a very important and good conversation to go have. It'll take a long time to talk about it, but if you wanted to delve in, I'm down to. We have allies in the area: South Korea, Japan, the Philippines. Also, like something like 40% of world trade transit the South China Sea. Taiwan is a leader in microchips that are essential for any first world economy.
No, they should be made here in America.
They should be, but they won't be able to be made for at least the next decade. This so-called silicon shield that Taiwan's developed over the past 20-some-odd years.
I'm sorry. It is absurd to me that the United States has invested so much in the defense of Taiwan. I do not like the Chinese Communist Party. I do not like the Chinese Communist Revolution. I don't like the Culture Revolution. I don't like what largely they've done. I wish the government of Taiwan, the true Republic of China, was still in control of the mainland and weren't forced onto that island. But it is a tiny island with limited industry. We should be building those resources here. We should be securing our borders, getting better trade agreements, and working for the American people. I do think I would not go as far as Tulsi in saying we outright abandon Taiwan, but the answers need to be, and it's a mix. I think we need peace through strength. That's why I liked, to a certain degree, when Trump said that she and Putin thought he was going to nuke Beijing and Moscow if they invaded. And he was like, I don't know if they really believed me, maybe 5%, but it was enough. And I'm like, I don't want to see anybody get nuked, but I like that they feared Donald Trump. Hopefully we don't have to go to war, and it'll never be an issue because Trump is, quote unquote, the madman. And she is going to be like, well, as long as Donald Trump is president, we're not making any moves because this guy, who knows what he's going to do? He's going to bomb something.
I do not want to surrender Taiwan and our other democratic allies to the communists. I'm anti-whatever supports that. So
I'm anti-whatever.
Whatever, if you want to see...
Are we going to fight a war with China?
You're old enough. We've fought wars with China.
Yeah, and that was Korean War. Fought, Heartbreak Ridge, and we went to a stalemate, and we're still... It's like this. We have these like fossilized foreign policy like positions that come out of the post-World War II order that I just don't think shouldn't have any real traction now, but are just getting like, okay, you're going to stop China from what they're doing in the South China Sea right now? Nobody's stopping them. They're doing it under the Biden administration. They did it under the Trump administration. They're just taking their space. And we're going to get into a massive war with a country of a couple billion people with incredibly sophisticated weapons, a world nuclear power, over some island because in 47, Chiang Kai-shek had to split there, and we're all anti-communists and we hate the communists, so we're going to go kill hundreds of thousands of Americans over this island because we can't produce semiconductors in the United States anymore because it all got offshored in the frickin' 90s. No way, man. Like, put your own son up for that crap, man. Like, the same thing I feel like with what's going on in the Middle East. Why are we fighting these wars? Why are we spending all this money when we can't even balance our budget? We're spending most of our tax money just paying the interest on our debt. If I ran my house the way that the freaking government is running things, I'd be bankrupt. You know, like, we can't afford this. Like, we got to get off this, like, macho, you know, we're the global cop, right? And, like, this notion of China is from, like, 1940. I'm sorry, they're a freaking superpower, man. Like, I don't want to fight the Han Chinese. That's crazy.
I guess my response would be the reason why peace exists now and will continue to exist in that region is because we are strong there. And the second we started getting weak and that Xi Jinping thought he will be militaristically able to conquer Taiwan, he would. As soon as he sees them be weak enough. As soon as Putin saw Ukraine weak enough, he thought it's his opportunity to attack.
And you feel like we became weak under the Biden administration, or did it happen before that?
Whenever the threshold happens. So it's different for each conflict. So
for
Taiwan,
Asia,
it hasn't happened yet because we still stand firmly with Taiwan.
But,
Threshold was reached in Ukraine, obviously.
China has
Putin's
obviously
invasion.
made different moves throughout that region where people feel like they are sort of amping up their military prowess and aggression. So is that them saying the Biden administration is weak? Did this start happening before? I mean, it hasn't. The scale hasn't tipped
It's
yet,
a philosophical thing.
Right
when
now?
Xi Jinping believes he is militaristically capable of taking Taiwan, that's when he will. So
I just want to say something real quick to the audience, those that are listening. We have currently about 50,000 concurrent viewers watching. And I just want to say you guys rock, and I deeply respect all of you. I sincerely mean this because it warms my heart that we are having this ridiculously esoteric geopolitical conversation about war and conflict that I think is some of the most important stuff in the world. It matters more to me than almost anything else. And there's so many people that are deeply interested in hearing it. I genuinely, I'm just in awe that people are here for this conversation. It's just really, really awesome, guys. So, Elaad, anyway, you're wrong. And yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I hope for peace, and the way to achieve it is through strength. And that's why I thought there was peace during the Trump administration. And by the way, it's not that America wasn't involved in any new wars. It's that conflicts that were occurring were cooling down. Fighting between Armenia and Azerbaijan, where America is very tangentially related, isn't flaming up during the Trump administration. The Philippines isn't getting harassed by China as much during a Trump administration than they are now under a Joe Biden administration. So it's not only an actual war that, weren't occurring under Trump. It was generally countries were more calm because they were scared of the threats that Trump was making to them because he's the master deal maker.
He's more unpredictable, for sure.
I just say, how about this? I think it all comes down to we're going to argue about who should be doing what, when, or why. But under Donald Trump, it was good in terms of foreign policy. I'll say this every day. When he crossed the DMZ with Kim Jong-un with no security detail, walking over to North Korea and walking back, that was one of the most incredible moments I have ever seen. I'm talking to the libertarians at the convention, and, they're ragging on Trump all the time. And I said, but he... with Kim Jong-un, crossed the DMZ, and they're okay, fair. That was really good. I mean, he had no security. They could have just taken him and said, we got a hostage in the president. What are you going to do about it? They're not going to. And so Trump, with great personal risk, tries to bring peace. And I think the reason is Trump's got an ego. I think Trump is a good person. I think if you know him, if you know the people around him, you'll hear nothing but praise for the man. He's got his attitude, he's got his mean tweets, and nobody's perfect. But I think a combination of Trump wants to be loved and Trump wants to drive him towards these peace efforts. What is he thinking? Most people want peace. Nobody wants war. Now, the military-industrial complex, the liberal economic order, they want war because it is a mechanism by which they can control regions and basically expand their influence with the petrodollar, IMF, World Bank, et cetera, et cetera.
It's good for business.
Absolutely. Donald Trump says, no. People want something else. The machine state says, we don't care what they want. We want control and to maintain exactly what we're building. Trump's motivation is then peace everywhere. Now, there is a fear, in my opinion, that I wouldn't call Trump an isolationist. You were saying he was more of that thought. Because he does believe that we should, to an extent, we are with NATO. They just got to pay their fair share, right? NATO should be paying the bills. So Trump is not completely just seal up America and walk away from everything. However, I do fear, and I think you're correct on this to a certain degree, Elaad, the Chinese Communist Party, the Belt and Road Initiative, the expansion they're doing in Africa and South America is to position themselves as the superpower. And then, heaven forbid, we as freedom-loving people, have to live under a unipolar Chinese communist boot. That is worrisome to me. I don't believe the Bolton method is the path towards stopping that. I actually think the Trump method is the path towards stopping that. That's why I like Donald Trump. Again, we had problems with spending. The deficit went through the roof. He's far from perfect. We had drone strikes increasing. There's criticisms and questions about why, and transparency on that was removed. But the end result of what we saw was some of the best stuff I've seen in my life.
And just to piggyback on that, Trump did eventually get some NATO countries to increase where their target spending was supposed to be. Each NATO country is supposed to have like a certain percent of GDP going towards their military. Many of them were slacking. Trump famously was threatening a lot of these countries that he'd pull out if they didn't pull their fair share. And then there's this also very famous picture of Trump, which I believe is at one of these NATO conferences, where he's sitting at a table, and then you have Angela Merkel kind of standing above him with her hands on the table. And then you have the Japanese prime minister standing by him, and then also famously John Bolton also nearby. Donald Trump also got the Japanese to start to change their constitution to allow their military to be more foreign and not just domestic. Some esoteric thing in the Japanese constitution that allowed them to beef up their military, which is very important. So again, peace through strength is how I believe we got there, and I think that's how Trump is going to be able to maintain that when, God willing, he gets back into office.
Well, didn't we wrote the Japanese Constitution after World War II, and I think we had some pacifist clause in it.
We wrote it purposefully pacifistic, but now we want them to be a little bit more hawkish towards our common enemy in the communist Chinese.
What could go wrong?
Look, I think the harsh reality is, especially as you get older, there's no end. The activists, they say the ends justify the means, but that's not true because you never meet the end. And so right now we say, here's what we want to have happened. Here's what we want to happen. Here's what we hope will happen. We wish there was no war. We wish October 7th never happened. Now we're in it. We're facing war. What do we want to accomplish? An end to that war so that we hope in the future we can live in peace. I'm sorry. I think that's impossible. And I'm not trying to be black-pilled or negative. I just think the state of life is a flux of various ideologies, and this is the nature of human social development, evolution, and literal evolution. You have warring factions and ideologies deciding what should or should not be competing for resources. Water wars at first, but now you have China saying, we want to grow. Our people want to have families. They want to build new houses. We need resources for that. We're going to go find them. There's not going to be a point where we accomplish a goal and then everything stops. And then it's like the year 2173, and they were like, wow, in the year 2082, it's when all war was done and peace was just permanent forever and everyone got along. No, that's impossible. Because you will always get, no matter what you do, some kind of fight that spirals out between people who cannot agree on their worldviews. Again, not trying to be negative, but I think that even if we accomplish everything we want to accomplish, the fight will never stop. There will always be the risk of great war and threats of violence, whatever it may be. And that's why they say the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. We can elect Donald Trump now. We can strive for these things. But China will always be pushing back. And if not China, another country emerges, another power emerges. We're always going to be staring down the barrel of great conflict. Maybe we colonize Mars with Elon Musk, and 1,000 years from now, Earth is unified, but now we're at war with Mars or something. Who knows?
But why do we need a standing army when we have nuclear weapons? Why do we have...
Because nuclear weapons can't occupy street corners.
That's true.
So you can turn them to glass. And the question of war is, what is the purpose of war? There's several different purposes. One is someone is attacking you and you need them to stop, in which case a nuclear weapon serves that purpose greatly. If Ukraine had a nuke, I think they might fire it at Russia. I don't know. Russia's too big. Russia might retaliate.
Well, they gave up their nuclear weapons and then Russia invaded, right? Like they gave up their...
Right.
Yeah.
But how's Russia going to invade Ukraine with nukes? It's hard to, once you just nuke a country to...
Well, it depends on what they want. If Russia wants land access to Crimea, where they have their military base and industrial center in Sevastopol, nukes are just fine. They could flatten every major Ukrainian city overnight with intercontinental ballistic missiles, and then there's no opposition whatsoever, and they walk on in. They can't, however, because there's opposition. The West, NATO, won't allow that, so they can't escalate to that point. War is basically, in many instances, resource conflict. So Russia, of course, needs access to Crimea Sevastopol. They took it because NATO and the EU were pressing into Ukraine and winning favor with Ukraine, their government, their structures. And this is largely due to energy, Gazprom, etc., and Europe wanting cheaper gas prices, where Russia controlled the majority of it. The West wants Russia to fall in line and provide them cheaper energy so their economy can expand, and we can overwhelm China effectively economically. At least that's what they claim. So the end result is basically this. Someone amasses power somehow. They want to keep amassing power. Someone will oppose their amassing of power, and you end up with Thucydides' trap. When a rising economic power is on the verge of displacing the dominant power, there's a tendency to lead to great war. I don't see any outcome in any of our endeavors that results in world peace in the future. Again, it sounds very negative, but what I mean to say is there's always going to be conflict in some fashion or another. Maybe we can get to the point where you have an international court system that handles things, but that would only be possible with a monopoly on violence, some entity that has a monopoly on violence. So if the liberal economic order succeeds and subjugates the rest of the planet, then you've just got the totalitarian state of jackboot UN troops coming down and kicking your door in and saying your meme's illegal, which then results in conflict. People rise up, dissent, then you get conflict in regions, be it terror, insurgency, whatever.
That's the FBI that kicks in your door and says your meme's illegal. But
that's true. But I mean, I'm saying in the future, when the global tyranny expands and you get these massive international blocks, it's going to be UN troops or something.
Tim, to follow up on what is war, there's a Prussian military theorist, Karl von Clausewitz, who said war is politics by any means. And I think that's a really apt description in understanding how war plays out between nations.
But what is politics?
Politics is getting other groups of people to do what you want them to.
Exactly. And so right now, there are various ways to go about that. The easiest, of course, is media manipulation. If you went back to the 1500s, and great wars in Europe, granted, the armies weren't nearly as big as we see them now, and you went to the king and said, I tell you this, I will get the people of, let's say, England versus France, every single French subject, every single one of them will bow before the king. I don't know my years, so I don't know when they were actually fighting or whatever.
All the time.
All the time. I was like 800 years.
All the time, yeah.
You will raise not one sword, you will fire not one arrow, and they will bow before you. Would you accept those terms? Of course. We want them to surrender. We don't want to have people die. It's a waste of our energy and resources. More men is better for us. How do we conquer them without fighting? Here's Facebook. We're going to give all of them a media machine that tells them what to think and when to think it and exposes them only to what we want them to see. And slowly but surely, over 7 years or so, the only thing they ever see when they're on their little phones going, wow, it's amazing. I got cats. I got dogs. And, ooh, the French king is a bad guy. Oh, and dogs and cats. And, oh, that French king, he's doing bad again. And then you create a generation of people who hate the king. And then the opposing force can just say, I'm here to save you. And they go, yay, because their minds have been changed over a long period of time. Cyber war, multidimensional warfare. This is where we're currently at. But I think you make a good point. War, it takes many forms. And what we're seeing with kinetic conflict is politics by any means. When Russia lost the influence battle trying to basically buy out Ukraine, as the West was trying to buy out Ukraine, they said, okay, we can't win anymore. Send in the tanks.
We weren't able to overthrow the pro-Western Russian Ukrainian government, so I guess it's war. We couldn't achieve.
Because the West overthrew the more moderate Yanukovych government.
We couldn't achieve our aims politically, so we're forced into violence.
I actually think it's fair to say Western influence resulted in the ousting of Yanukovych in Ukraine. And in conflict, I say that's preferable to sending in tanks.
Well, it's like then Putin tried poisoning. I forget which prime minister of Ukraine. All their names sound the same to me. But when he wasn't able to do this stuff successfully, it's send in the troops. And we do this too. This isn't unique.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's how a lot of people make structure and power.
It's all nation states do this.
I do rightly enjoy a good hearty foreign policy discussion. But let's talk about Howard Stern. Because we got time for one more segment, and we got the story from the New York Times. 13 things we learned from Harris's interview with Howard Stern.
Great.
I'll tell you what I learned. They say in a lengthy sit-down, the veteran radio host extracted an array of new details about Kamala Harris's life. What I learned is that Kamala Harris doesn't actually care about equity or diversity because Howard Stern is an unrepentant racist. That's not fair. He actually is a repentant racist. But he had like some of the most ridiculously racist bits back in his day that have gone viral that are shocking even to me. There's one where he's in total blackface, dropping the N-word over and over and over again. I'm like, wow. I mean, he was a shock jock, right? Kamala didn't care about that. This guy's flipped. Howard Stern, what happened to the guy? Did his balls drop off? Like, how did he go from saying, F you, I will say whatever I want and no one can stop me, to please, I'll say whatever you tell me?
I think his culture changed, right? Like, he wants to stay relevant, and I think we can see this over and over again with the Me Too movement and other things, like the tolerance for sort of the brash, maybe borderline vulgar radio hosts is not the same that it once was. So once his shtick lost a little bit of the shock and awe that maybe it had at the beginning that rallied the fans, it became subject to the same kind of scrutiny that all people become subject to in a more progressive society.
I don't know. I didn't watch this interview. Did Howard Stern do his usual shtick where he invites Kamala's mama or dad on and asks them to kiss or something?
Probably
I
not,
think,
right?
I think it's the one time he didn't fire hot dogs at a woman's breasts. I mean, like, isn't this the guy that like would do things like that? Now, look, fine. Look, far be it from me to criticize a guy's past and all that stuff. He's truly changed. But it's very interesting how he just lost his nerve. You don't got to be racist and degrading to women to have a pair. You know what I mean? You can actually say things like, look, you are worthy of criticism, Kamala Harris. I got no problem criticizing Donald Trump. That I heard Trump supporters yell at me all the time. It's fine. You know, this is the realm of politics. Howard Stern not only abandoned his edge, but he went completely the other direction. What's the opposite of a shock jock?
Mainstream radio host and
yeah, he's
NPR
just
host.
filibustering the radio over there. I mean, I really do think that this is a level of like, the other thing could be he got famous and then therefore started interviewing when he was interviewing famous people. Like, these are people that are actually now in his social circle, so he doesn't necessarily want to be asking them all these questions that will make them upset or treating them in sort of these scandalous ways.
Have you guys seen because they mentioned in this, she enjoyed Maya Rudolph's impression of her. Did you see the SNL clip where they made fun of the debate? Mm-hmm. Yo, they mocked Kamala Harris as being a drunk. Mm-hmm. They had her like drinking wine and like, I should have chosen Josh. And he's like, she's like, no. And she pours more wine and keeps drinking.
Is any of that true? Like, is those clips I've seen where she's supposedly slurring her words? Is she really, what's the
I don't know.
I don't think her campaign has released a statement about it.
But this is the interesting thing about the media, what's happening in the media. I mean, CBS did not give her an easy softball interview. They pressed her several times. They said, Bill Whitaker says, the border crisis, do you regret undoing Trump's policies? And she's like, well, I'm just trying to work on solutions. He goes, yeah, but the illegal immigration's quadrupled. She's like, hey, we cut it in half. It's like, so that's still double. They pressed her on this. SNL, I don't know if Kamala Harris is actually a drunk. I think it's a strong possibility because there are these videos. Sure, maybe. Not confirmed. So it's pretty surprising that SNL was like, and the angle we're going with Harris is that she's a drunk. That's pretty impressive for SNL. And they mocked Tim Waltz for saying he was friends with school shooters.
The thing is, Maya Rudolph's performance or her parody of Kamala Harris when they did it in 2020 was really successful. People loved the caricature of Kamala. I think maybe it's testament to Maya Rudolph. She's got good comedic timing or whatever. But she made Kamala Harris likable to the American public in a way that Kamala Harris is actually not. So even if on the inside Kamala Harris is really mad about the jab about wine drinking or whatever else, there's one line that I saw where she's like, my campaign is like Sabrina Carpenter's song Espresso. Like, you like the vibes, but it doesn't mean anything. Like, even if these were making her mad, Maya Rudolph as a sort of celebrity and as someone who is actually entertaining the public is not someone she can attack because, again, she is the actual likable version of Kamala.
Also, I think it's kind of an endorsement in a certain sense because they're like everybody can relate to being drunk, right? Like, it's sort of like playful criticism. There's no mocking of her for whatever, not having a single clear position on anything.
Yeah.
Right? Like I don't know, I'm a grumpy old man. I'm a Dan Aykroyd, John Belushi, 1970s Saturday Night Live kind of guy. I just don't think they're that great anymore.
I think that's a widely shared opinion.
It's been fascinating to see these political campaigns, both the Kamala Harris and Donald Trump campaign, engage more with social media platforms and I guess people on social media. And then it's very telling to see which candidate presidential campaigns pick which social media people to have them do their interviews. So Kamala Harris is out here picking the Call Her Daddy Alex Cooper person. They're picking Howard Stern. Donald Trump's team's picking people like Aiden Ross. Obviously, Tim Pool had the Trump interview. It's just an interesting contrast in who these campaigns have interviewed them from the social media realm, things that obviously didn't exist 20 years ago and wasn't as potent a decade ago.
It's interesting how things are changing, man. I have no idea what we're going to see in the next year. I have no idea what we're going to see in 28 days. We're not going to know who wins the election on election night. So what's going to happen? I was just talking with I was talking with a guy who does like ad network stuff. I'll keep it a little bit vague. And I'm just like, is interest in the election going to wane after the election? And he was like, might increase. And I'm like, that's actually an interesting point. Traditionally, after a 4-year election, interest in politics drops off into oblivion because people are like, please, no more. I am done.
It depends on who wins. I think the media is salivating for a second Trump turn, although they will not say it. All the liberal news outlets had their best 4 years under Donald Trump. I don't know if that's because of his economy. I don't know if that's because of the content he provided.
But there is a mathematical limit. Mm-hmm. Watching this hurricane stuff, and they're like, it looks like Milton's approaching the mathematical limit of what a hurricane can be in these waters. It's like, wow. But there's a mathematical limit to how much you can extract in media. I think you're right. The media wants Trump to win because they know it's going to be just the best ratings they've ever got. But at a certain point, the ratings of hysteria result in people's brains exploding. You know, figuratively. Like, people are going to be ripping each other to shreds. I don't know that's a good thing.
MSNBC's audience's heads have remained exploded since. And I don't know, you can't blow it up more than once. So after all that Rachel Maddow garbage that she's fed you over the years, I don't know if you could get any more brainwashed.
Isn't that kind of wild, though? If you listen to Howard Stern and Rachel Maddow, you have no idea what's happening in the world. And if you listen to Fox News, you're going to get a biased take on it, but you'll know what's happening in the world. Like, Fox News' approach is going to say, well, Donald Trump came out and he said X, Y, and Z, and we like it. MSNBC is going to come out and say, Donald Trump actually said that he was Hitler and it's a bad thing. And you're like, well, he didn't say that. That's ridiculous. The corporate press lies about who Trump is and what he wants. And then you see in right-wing media, I don't even like saying right-wing because what does that even mean? But opposition media, whatever, they'll be honest about Trump and then explain why they either like or don't like it. But you don't get that with the corporate press. So these people live in some fictional, delusional state where they have no idea what's actually happening.
You'll see many oppositional interviews in the right-wing media ecosystem to Trump. And something that's a lot less common is the reverse of that, with these left-wing outlets being consistently difficult in their interviewing styles with Kamala Harris. I'm glad Whitaker, that's why I commended him earlier, deciding to take a new path, because a lot of journalists had a lot of opportunities at Kamala. The debate interviewers had a lot of opportunity to know, get their name out there.
I don't actually know that there have been that many opportunities to push Kamala Harris because her campaign has been so guarded with her, right? Like even her first big interview, she had to have Tim Walz with her as some sort of chaperone or emotional support dog
to hold her hand.
It was very weird. I wonder if there are two paths that my brain goes down. One is they are selectively picking who gets to have the hardball questions, right? Like they're not going to go on Fox News and do. I mean, I think Tim Walz just did a Fox and Friends or whatever the Fox morning show is, but Kamala Harris is not going to go on Fox News and face hard questions. It's still a sort of sympathetic outlet that's been allowed to push her on things, and in part that's because they aren't really going to pull too many clips that make her look bad. The other part is I think that the American public are frustrated, and more every year, corporate media realizes that their biggest threat is independent media, which is gaining confidence from voters. And so maybe to your point, they can't continue on and on with the shtick of like everything is fine and everything Kamala or whoever has the Democratic endorsement says is great and everything Trump says is awful without looking foolish and just continuing to hemorrhage viewers.
To be fair, if I were the Tim Walz campaign, or I guess Kamala Harris campaign, I'd also say Tim Walz should no longer go on Fox News because that Shannon Bream interview was atrocious. Shannon Bream railed him on his abortion stance about Roe v. Wade in particular, and how in Minnesota he passed laws where there would be no limits to abortion. Right. And he said otherwise, but again, nobody fact checks. Nobody in the left wing cares about fact checking Kamala Harris or Tim Walz, but every little thing coming out of Donald Trump, or especially J.D. Vance's mouth recently, instantly gets fact checked.
Right. I mean, that's because he's smooth and did well. I mean, they wanted him to be sort of an awkward, women-hating weirdo, and in fact he's a very well-spoken person. I mean, he was in PR for the military. It's not his first time dealing with hostile interviewers as a politician or before that. I think that, you know, I don't envy the Harris-Walz campaign staffers who are in charge of booking interviews because they have two candidates who prove to not be particularly charismatic. I know people argue Walz has, I don't know how you feel about Tim Walz, but like that he has some sort of like salt of the earth charm. I don't really see it.
Like he appeals to old white people. That was the idea behind it. Like he's a football coach, former football coach. Kind of, or like
relatable, he's like macho. A man of the people. I never really felt this way, but I know that I listened to an interview with voters from Minnesota that were like, he's like a great debater and all this stuff, and then he did really badly.
Haven't you seen the camo hat? I mean, obviously
if you don a camo hat, you're obviously one of those people. The camo hat reminds me of the Carhartt hat. I don't know if you guys ever saw this meme, but Carhartt, the brand, the beanies got Carhartt. Really popular. Okay, and there was like a meme that was like, you know, the thing about Carhartt is like you don't know if a hipster's wearing them, you don't know if like a like leather-handed blue-collar man, or like you don't know who's wearing it. It really does appeal to everyone. Do you have an opinion on Tim Walz? Is he endorsing Kamala Harris, or is he making Kamala Harris better for you?
Well, he seems to me like they chose him because they didn't want somebody who would overshadow Kamala, and it seems like this kind of weird, kind of almost like gender politics, like with choosing him. He seems, when I look at him visually, he looks a little goofy to me, and like a little sort of like a milk toast candidate, if that's the right phrase. But I really don't know that much about him, and I just, he seems to me, okay, we need a guy in there, we need something for the white men, but we gotta have somebody who's not going to, you know, compete with her in terms of star power, right? Like she's very much the star, but like.
But that's a very loose use of that word.
Right? Yeah.
Fair enough. A D- and he's an F.
Right. She's sort of like the candle to his burned out light bulb, but, you know, she still gets to be brighter than he is.
That's why I'm saying I can't imagine them winning. Not that Kamala can't win. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I genuinely can't imagine a scenario where someone so lacking actually wins the presidency, with Donald Trump with all of the historical iconography surrounding him, shaking hands with RFK Jr. with explosions behind him. Like literally that happened. And then you've got on the ground with his hands over his face with the blood coming down and then raising his fist in the air. So many moments of this past year just scream historical record that if this man were to lose, life would it seems so strange that all of these major historical moments would lead to nothing. But maybe it does. I don't know. For now, we're going to go to Super Chat. So if you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button, subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, share the show with everyone you know. And I do mean that. I'm not trying to be funny. Tell your friends if you like the show because it really does help. And I will, there's a lot of people who are asking. I do check Twitter and tweet while I'm doing the show. And a lot of people don't know this. I have two monitors. I'm monitoring the show, viewership, comments, stream, bit rate, etc. Monitoring X. We are streaming to X. So I'm looking at all these things just for people who are wondering, because I tweeted. And they were like, why is Tim tweeting right now? Isn't he doing the show? And I'm like, right, this is all part of it. I look at Twitter for breaking news, and I will post tweets. I will say one more thing. I have two more things, but one about this. And smash the like button, share that, all that jazz. And we are on the front page of YouTube. Yeah, front page.
What?
Yeah, front page. So It is what it is. I don't know. Over the past, we hit around 51,000 or so concurrents, slightly above average. And so when I'm doing the show, I'm checking, and I use a private mode default not signed in account. And Timcast IRL was featured on the front page of YouTube. And so I used a separate browser, I used the Brave browser, not signed in, private. So it's basically, you know, it's got no data towards it. And sure enough, once again, it showed Timcast IRL on the front page. I think they've changed the way they're recommending things. I think YouTube may have reverted back to a genuine interest-based. I wonder if Donald Trump all these big companies expect Trump to win. And they know that if Trump gets in, and then they start going through what these companies have been doing in terms of bias, they are going to be obliterated. When Elon Musk bought X, they panicked. We saw this weird thing happen where a bunch of conservative personalities and right-leaning personalities started gaining massive follower counts while the left started losing massive follower counts. We didn't understand what was going on. The theory was that X, at the time Twitter, was basically shutting down these weighted systems that were benefiting the left or liberals or corporate press, wherever it may be, because they didn't want Elon to discover it. And this caused a visible shift. I'm wondering if right now, the reason why our subscribers are way up, our views are way up, or our concurrent viewership is way up is because YouTube's turned off whatever they had turned on. And so now it's basically, if you have the highest live viewership right now, you're going to be featured, which is just the default of if the show is good and people like it, you appear in the trending and recommended sections of the website. Don't know for sure. All I can say is we were featured at the top of live, podcasts, and all on YouTube. And I checked 2 different browsers. Not everyone's going to get the same results. Don't know. All I know is based. Thanks, YouTube. I do appreciate it. And cool stuff, huh?
I don't want to sound conspiratorial, but I'm fairly sure YouTube employees check all of their homepage, like top of the live viewership videos that they post. And I suspect there had to have had a conversation been had around like, okay, are we going to put Tim Pool up there or not? Because you are such a big account. There's also a relatively new YouTube CEO. I don't know if there's some changes going on behind the scene.
Really? Right.
Neil Mohan.
Yeah.
Something past Susan Wojcicki.
She passed
away.
Yeah. You know what? We had Dal Sonia on a couple days ago, and I said, what? Did they have a meeting about featuring live shows, and some guy was like, what about Tim Pool? And they were like, yeah, but he's a fascist. And then someone went, no, he's not. He's kind of moderate and milquetoast. And they were like, oh. And it just finally took someone speaking up. But maybe you're right. It's the new CEO. He may be saying, guys, we need a merit-based recommendation system or we're going to lose out to Netflix, Disney. All of these different streaming platforms are stealing our viewership.
Or the show is that darn good.
It just can't fight it.
No, I think the show has been that darn good. And, we've just struggled through.
Shout out Neil Mohan.
But if you guys are listening, give us a good review also on whatever podcast platform, audio side you're listening to. I hate to neglect the people who listen because we have 1 million subscribers, 1 million followers for the audio podcast, and we never really talk to you guys. So if you are listening and you're one of our 1 million people who listen on Apple or Spotify, leave us a good rating. Give us 5 stars, whatever you got to do. We're going to read your super chats. T-Bomb says, we've been trying to reach you about your car's extended warranty. Oh, thank God. I've been worried about that. How do I get in touch with you? Suncoast Samurai says, hi, Tim and crew. I'm currently in Sarasota staring down a vicious hurricane, and I'm so happy to know that Ukraine gets another billion. God help us. Well, when the storm surge comes and smashes you into a building and drowns you, you'll be all right, because you'll know in your heart as you struggle to breathe that in Ukraine they have electricity. And so that's what really matters.
Maybe he'll get a $750 check.
Yeah.
Don't worry, Lebanon comes before you as well, so don't forget that. But in all seriousness, our thoughts and prayers go out to everybody affected by the hurricane.
The Clayway says, Tim, have you ever hated a guest? No, there's very few people I actually hate. I don't. Is there somebody that I hate? I don't think so. I don't know that I hate anybody. Am I missing? Am I forgetting something?
Would you invite somebody in that you hated?
But I don't know that I hate anybody.
Right.
Those would be the best people to have on.
Yeah,
because conflict sells.
I will. I've had guests that I thought were stupid.
Right.
You know, we've had a couple of guests on who suffer from what I call Israel derangement syndrome, and I will clarify this for you because I am not saying Israel derangement syndrome means that you hate Israel. I am not saying that you have Israel derangement syndrome if you criticize Israel. Those were always allowed. It's the people who claim that everything in the world is the result of Israel. For instance, someone called in asking about the fentanyl crisis in West Virginia. And a guest we had on said almost within 30 seconds, well, Israel, they're running. And I'm like, whoa. We're talking about fentanyl in West Virginia, which is prescribed by doctors. Yeah, but the thing about Israel is, and I'm like, okay, that's Israel derangement syndrome. Okay. If you come at me and you say, I have problems with the journalist deaths in Gaza from the Israeli conflict. I say, oh, wow, yeah. If you say there's children who have died, I'll be like, that's terrible. That's a really bad thing. You're allowed to criticize these things. If you say, I think their government is bad, Netanyahu sucks, we shouldn't be funding them, I'll say, okay, well, I hear you. But when you make deranged statements like the fentanyl crisis in West Virginia is caused by Israel, I'm sorry, you are nuts, okay? There's legitimate criticisms there. There's legitimate arguments, I think, for and against and whatever, but that's the derangement syndrome. So not that I hate the individuals, but I do think that they're annoyingly deranged. There you go. All right, we'll grab some more here. Joey Gressok says, hey, Tim and gang, huge fan. Have been a longtime listener, welcoming a baby number 4 into this world today. Please keep up the good fight. I have too much riding on the future to let it fall. Fight, fight, fight. Indeed. And as you guys know, 1 like equals 2 fight, 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 because another guy tried to kill Trump. It happened twice. He didn't say fight, fight, fight twice, but we're going to give him 2 anyway.
Great job on being well above the replacement rate. That's 2.3.
Absolutely.
You're almost double. I mean, I think you have to have another kid to technically be double.
This is not true. I need a fact check on this. Snapple Fact says, Snapple Facts, Tim, Mega Millions will now be $5 a ticket. Tell me again the economy is good. They just upped the poor man tax by 2 times. Fight, fight, fight. Is that...
They raised the Mega Million tax. Let me double check to see if it's fact.
Mega Million tax.
Or the Mega Million price.
Is the Mega Millions really $5 now? No. What was it before? It was $2? Powerball. Isn't Powerball $1? Or is it $2?
Yeah, it's $5 now as of yesterday.
Well, like what's the payout? Is it like variable? I don't do it.
The payout will go up.
It'll go, all right.
Yeah. So bigger payouts, but more expensive tickets.
Is this like when they say, but you have more purchasing power right now, even though everything's more expensive, you're also making more money? Like this is like economic jargon that doesn't actually result in anything good. There
is a chart that was released showing inflation rates for for standard goods, groceries, where we are in the DC metro area. I mean, we're about an hour and a half outside of DC, but it's still considered relatively the DC metro. 18.8% increase in real costs adjusted for inflation. Wages are not improving against inflation. Wages adjusted for inflation have declined. People's purchasing power has declined. I am sick of hearing the economy is good when people can't afford to buy groceries. Anyway, Kinsei Sensei says, rip to my valiant rooster, Walter the Brave, who died today defending his flock from a coyote. Not one hen was lost. He was a noble defender. He will be missed dearly. I will avenge him. Avenge him.
Word.
You know, it needs to be said every so often that there's a reason why medieval countries praised the chicken and the rooster. And it's actually quite simple because people of knowledge understand the symbol of what chickens and roosters represent. You see, the hens lay eggs every single day. They are abundant with life. And it was actually surprising when chickens were introduced to Europe because you had a bird that could lay an egg every day. They were like, this is crazy. As long as we keep feeding them, they keep laying eggs. And eggs are good. We like eating them. Normally, you'd find some, but it takes a long time for a bird to make, and they're small. Chicken eggs were big. The roosters sacrifice themselves for their hens. So humans recognize the honor in that noble sacrifice. And it's funny that we use the word chicken to imply cowardice, which is absurd to me because chickens represent roosters and hens. They're all chickens. And a rooster will run full speed at a coyote knowing it will die to protect his women. That's admirable. Roosters have more integrity and honor than many men. So, watch who you call chicken because you could be complimenting, right? Alex says Pizza Hut helped create the best anime, Code Geass. They did? Well, I don't know. But I want to give a shout out to Breezewood, PA again, because they have a standalone Pizza Hut restaurant, like an OG classic one where you can sit down and they have a buffet and all that stuff. That's what it's all about. You bring your kids there and you get to book it. I don't know if they do book it or whatever, but it's cool. Tac Genesis says, a Glock is a commit a crime and throw away gun. A real gun owner isn't going to say that in any serious manner. I'm not a big gun guy, but I kind of agree. If someone asked me what kind of gun I had, the first thing I'd say is Barrett M82. And then when they laugh and say, okay, like seriously, well, I do have one. But in terms of like my personal weapon, it's 1911 or something, Glock. Sure.
It's a weird way to, I'm not a gun guy, but that's a weird way to answer the question, what kind of gun do you have, right? Because it's a brand, as I understand, the Glock.
A Glock is a Glock. I don't know. I have one. They're good, I guess. But like, if someone was asking me, and I'm not a gun guy, you know, so all the big gun enthusiasts are like, Tim doesn't know what he's talking about half the time. You are correct. However, the weapons that I have, the guns that I have that I'm proud of, is not my Glock. I don't know. It's my Barrett M82.
She's saying that's the only
BMG.
one she owns, so she can't be like,
fine, fair.
you know, like I have a cooler gun or whatever.
I feel like people usually add the measurement in the gun, the fire.
Like a Glock 17 or something?
Yeah, whatever.
I think it's a way of her saying like and you know, people have fact checked her on this. She's been mentioning that she's a gun owner since at least 2015. I think it's her way of being like, I have a weapon for self-defense and that's it. Like, she's not a gun enthusiast, but she is talking about personal protection.
She was a cop. I don't think it's the most outrageous thing.
That's
that she would
when
have
she did
a
this interview in
firearm
2015. She was like, I was a criminal prosecutor. Like, yes, I have a gun for protection. I think she's implying that she could potentially be a target. I don't know how you feel about this as someone who's involved in federal cases.
When was the last time she fired her gun? That's what I'm really.
She said she's been to the range.
Really? And
Yeah.
and she's got Secret Service protection. Now, I think she's just trying to win gun owner votes in a really weak way because I don't think anybody's buying it. I think she's going to be terrible if you're a Second Amendment person. I think she's, you know, more. I mean, I think one of the choices here you've got is between big government and the administrative state and sort of an anti-administrative state position in Trump. And,
Yeah.
you know, if you're for big government, you're going to vote for Kamala. And if you're not for big government, you're going to vote for Trump or just give up.
And for the people who like small government, Trump's not even. It's you know, Dave Smith, if he was the Libertarian candidate, but Dave Smith not running sure helped Trump because the Libertarian Party nominates Chase, right?
Chase Oliver.
And now the Libertarians don't even want to vote Libertarian. So, all right. Kieran the Meat Man says Pee Wee Herman died in 2023, so he is voting Kamala Harris. Aha! He's a funny guy. Funny guy. Salty Mick. I'm just saying salty. Her positions are vague until she figures out what will hurt her the least. She provides no detail until pressed. She lies about owning a gun. Ask her what kind she has, and she says the most popular brand. Ask her which kind of Glock. I think she has a Glock, but I don't think she knows what it is. I think she went to a gun store, and she was like, I'll take a gun. And they're like, which one? And she's like, I don't know, that one. And they're like, man, that's a Glock 17. She's like, sure. That's it.
I'm going to show how little I know about police departments, but what is the standard? Don't they have a standard issue firearm, pistol?
I think it varies
by department.
Yeah, but I don't know.
I've always
I think in the
heard-
city they do Glock.
She was a
17,
prosecutor, not a cop.
Prosecutor,
Right?
that is.
Like, there's a big difference.
Law
right?
enforcement.
Like she's you know, that's another thing that bothers me about her. She's sort of that mass incarceration crowd. And Biden very much in the 90s was, you know, a mass incarceration guy. And, you know, she's part of the machine that has made the United States a country that jails more people per capita than any other country in the world.
So how are progressives voting for her?
Because there's what's that? Scratch a liberal and watch a fascist bleed. Because there's like this cult of a prosecutor on the left right
Because Donald Trump is a threat to democracy.
That's right.
That's why. That's allegedly.
I like that one. Scratch a liberal and watch a fascist
bleed.
I've never heard that. Leftists love
No.
saying that one.
Really?
Yeah, that's
Wow.
leftists' favorite saying. That's to call all liberals
and-
fascists.
But
just as bad.
and I give respect to the leftists because the true leftists are not voting for her. But a lot of quote unquote leftists, like run of the mill progressives, are voting for her. So, all right. What do you say? Programa Chao? Sam Fronteras? Is that Portuguese? I have bad news, Tim. The PBD podcast got the episode removed because of copyright of the 60 Minutes interview. Yeah, well, they should file an appeal because this is the epitome of fair use. A woman running for president gives an interview and we criticized her for it. Sorry, that's what fair use is for. But it's true. The PBD podcast I checked did tweet that their episode got removed and there's an image saying copyright takedown. So I don't know much more about why or what happened, but that'll be resolved immediately, because that is, if it's actually the case, you can't do that. That's fair use. Andy Babandi says a lot of talk about Michigan and Wisconsin as Midwest swing states, but keep an eye on Minnesota as a red surprise. Lots of people here were fed up with the Waltz as governor. First-time voters are voting Trump because we can't afford food and gas. Indeed. Yeah.
I just don't think there's a way to navigate around this economic argument. There's no way to package the economy where young voters or voters who are paycheck to paycheck right now are like, more of this, more of this. I mean, she hasn't differentiated herself. Harris has not differentiated herself enough from Biden. And young voters are I mean, all kinds of voters, definitely young voters are looking at their paychecks and saying, why is this not enough to start my life on? There's no way for her to spin this.
And like, again, I'm not clear on her positions at all, but like, didn't she come out for some kind of price controls?
Oh, yeah.
Which are always disastrous, right? Like, I mean, that's economics like 101, right? But like, and then she seemed to backpedal for it. But like, what's her solution for any of this, if it's even possible?
No. And do you want to gamble that she has a plan if she's not willing to spell it out? Like, if you had a really good plan, wouldn't you be screaming it from the rooftops right now?
Yeah.
She's not.
No, she seems to try to.
Well, then if she does come out with the plan, it's like, why aren't you doing it right now? You're the vice president. You're the tiebreaker vote in the House, or in the Senate, rather. Joe Biden's the president. Do it right now.
I think no matter, like, she can have every pop star in the world endorse her. She can go on as many late night shows as she wants. She's not going to be able to change the voters' minds on this issue. The economy is king right now. And it's true for a lot of elections, but especially after the last 3.5 years.
Yeah. LeDaniels says, I think Biden preempted Kamala on purpose, but for a positive reason. It took some of the heat off her. Not all the media was focused on fumbling through another speech. Perhaps. Koroag says, Milton is going to make the wars all over the world worse. The command and control center in Tampa Bay is the main path. It will just make this worse all over, not just the U.S., since it's who's in charge of the Middle East. Interesting. Gravity says, please watch Lord of War. People learn whom the dude is like, allegedly. I think I saw that movie. It's the movie where it's got the really interesting opening where the bullet moves through all the stages of manufacturing or whatever. Was that Lord of War? That was. And then I think they said there was an error and that the full cartridge fires itself and not just the bullet. So you actually see the cartridge launch through the air because they don't know what they were doing. It's like on The Simpsons when, I can't remember who it was, but there's a famous Simpsons bit where there's a guy with a revolver and he's loading a magazine into the, yeah. You don't do that with revolvers. But liberals don't know what guns are, so, you know.
It reminds me of the staged photo of, it was like a bullet in a fence, but like with the cartridge still attached to it.
I've seen that.
You know what I'm talking? Like it was a very famous.
Yeah.
It's like such an obviously staged photo.
Pinochet's helicopter tour says, Elaad, it's not too late. Join any conflict you want.
You're signing up for war?
Conflict. I am trying to encourage peace, so I don't want conflict.
Right? So why aren't you going to go be the strength?
He's a journalist. He doesn't get involved on either side.
I forgot.
That one gamer says, when can we expect Elaad to enlist in the military? He has the itchiest trigger finger, but will never fight for his beliefs.
I think the United States would be so much better off with a mandatory draft like you couldn't imagine.
You could mandate your own personal draft and sign up.
Sure, and I think there's a civic duty that it should be incumbent on all Americans to participate in what makes our country the greatest country ever. It would help with our assimilation rates. It would help breed patriotism amongst our youngest.
Did you ever consider signing up for the military?
No, I haven't.
Why not?
But if my country called, no. But if the country called on me to serve, I would.
So you would do it if mandated, but you don't feel any need to volunteer despite
it's a volunteer
believing that peace through strength is important.
Look, it's a volunteer army, and it's a civilian-led army. Therefore, those are the people who can have opinions on it. Not only people in the military should have opinions on geopolitics. Moreover, if you talk to people in the military, they are much more hawkish than I am, overwhelmingly. So it's rich coming from people in general. Like, you want to know who the most hawkish people are. It's mostly the people in the military. But if called to serve, I would. And I think we should have a mandatory draft in our country. Part of something that makes Israel so great is that they have a mandatory draft for both men and women.
And South Korea, right?
That doesn't mean you, and I believe Taiwan.
Mandatory basic training.
Mandatory basic training. But that's also, most of the people in the military aren't combat troops. You know, they're 90%.
I just think there should be a component of basic training in high school.
I think we should have
That's
a
what
mandatory
Jim should
draft. 3 years for men, 2 years for women. I think it would be great delaying college a little bit to after high school to decide what you want to do better.
Delay college, abolish it.
What does the parent in the room think of this?
I'm against a draft. I mean, I think it just leads to, again, it's the standing army problem. Right?
I mean, I think we'd have more of a national guard to go help in national disaster areas.
Draft doesn't work. Getting people who don't want to fight, who are too scared to fight, who are forced to fight causes you problems. So cultural incentives work better. The reason we got off the draft was not because we were like, oh no, there's protests. It was, hey, these guys are really ineffective. Is there another way we can recruit? And they're like, yeah, economics. Okay, we'll do that.
I mean, Vietnam was a disaster.
Most of the army isn't fighting like most of the time either.
Right.
So when I say draft, 99%, almost 100% of the people will not be seeing any conflict if we had a mandatory draft in our country. So
right, but that wasn't true in Vietnam. In Vietnam,
it wasn't true.
A quarter of draftees were actually going to combat or something like that. Or it might have been 17%.
Sure.
I think that high school should have basic training. And to some degree, there should be I think high schools should have health requirements, meaning you will not get your diploma unless you can pass a physical test, which is swinging from the monkey bars or whatever. It's crawling through the mud. There should be a physical component to high school graduation.
Yeah, sure. Just to push back on the question or whatever the super chat was saying too. What is it? Such the case that only people who have served in the military should have any say in our government?
Yes, I'm for that.
I think too.
Well,
Wait,
then
we're going to wrap things up. We're at that time. We're going to go to the members only show. So we'll carry on this debate. Smash the like button, subscribe, share the show, and of course, leave us a good review if you're listening to this on the audio side. 5 stars would really help. You can follow me on X at Timcast. You can follow me on Instagram, Timcast as well, and become a member at timcast.com to watch the members only show that's coming up. Tor, do you want to shout anything out?
Nah, man, just this was a lot of fun. Thanks.
Right on. We can find you on X, right?
Yeah, you can find me on X, Tor Ekeland, PLLC.
There you go.
Tricky.
Thanks.
Very humble over there. Doesn't want to tell people where to find him.
Well, that's, I'm just having fun.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. So glad we were able to reach the homepage on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram at Barely Informed with Elaad and on X at Elaad Eliyahu. Hannah Claire?
Yeah, guys, thanks for tuning in. It means a lot to, I think, everyone in this room. It's been so fun having you here, Tor. I'm at hannahclaire.b on Instagram. I'm hannahclaireb on Twitter. Have a good night.
All right, everybody. We will see you all over at timcast.com in about a minute. Thanks for hanging out.